Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao King of Revolution, and we have a World War III alert. But first, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button, like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know we got morning revolutionary classes. And we got to get into this. The African superpowers are upset. They want war with Zelensky they say he helped terrorists slaughter Russian and Mali soldiers. They want war with NATO. They are defying NATO, and they will not go back to being puppets of the French and the British and the Americans.
In an unprecedented and explosive turn of events, diplomatic relations between Mali and Ukraine have reached a boiling point. The transitional government of the Republic of Mali has issued a searing communique condemning Ukraine for its alleged involvement in a brutal attack on Malian defense and Russian security forces.
Now, the reason this is so serious because, remember, they're fighting terrorists. They're fighting jihadists. They're not fighting rebels. They're fighting terrorists. They're fighting Al-Qaeda. Remember, they're fighting the same people America and the French said they were there fighting. So how is it Ukraine now is siding with the terrorists to go fight Russians wherever they're at? That's terrorism. But the African nations now are very upset. And we might start seeing powerful African nations on the Ukrainian battlefield getting their payback. That's serious business. Ukraine should have never did this.
This is as Ukraine unveils new lineup of jets to fight Russia. Mali's transitional government revealed that Andriusov, the spokesman for the Ukrainian military intelligence agency, brazenly admitted Ukraine's involvement in what has been described as a cowardly, traitorous, and barbaric attack by armed terrorist groups. The attack, which resulted in tragic loss of Malian and Russian soldiers.
The U.S. can't say, well, we don't have enough information on who did what. No, the Ukrainians already came out and bragged that they helped the Tuareg terrorists kill the Russians and the Mali soldiers. Dozens of them. Oh, no, they helped them with the help of NATO. They would have never been able to do it without the help from the French and the U.S. imperialists. But this was a big mistake because the Africans will make them pay. You see, this is, like I say, going to mean powerful African armies sending troops and weaponry back to the Ukrainian battlefield to get back real soon.
Has been making waves across social media. Let's listen to the statement to fully understand Mali's reaction.
On
behalf of our highest authorities, I have the great honor of reading communique number 068 of the transitional government. The communique's content follows. The transitional government of the Republic of Mali has taken note with deep shock of the subversive remarks by which Mr. Andriusov, spokesman for the Ukrainian military intelligence agency, admitted the involvement of Ukraine in a cowardly, traitorous, and barbaric attack by armed terrorist groups that resulted in the death of elements of the Malian defense and security forces.
Ukraine being a terrorist state, they're a terrorist state, they're showing it. They exposed that the French and Americans was helping the terrorists all along. Like the Africans said, like we've been reporting, they've been helping them all along. They have never been fighting them. If they were fighting them, well, then why is the Ukrainians now helping them? Those are the same terrorists NATO said they was fighting. Well, why are Ukraine helping them?
As well as material damage. These remarks were reinforced by Mr. Yuri Pivotverev, the Ukrainian ambassador to Senegal, who openly and unequivocally displayed his country's support for international terrorism by speaking in Mali. Worse, in their comments, these Ukrainian officials have announced other results to come. These extremely serious assertions have, in fact, not been denied or condemned by the Ukrainian authorities, which shows a clear official support of the Ukrainian government for terrorism in Africa, in the Sahel, and more specifically in Mali. After a thorough examination of the situation, the transitional government of the Republic of Mali emphasizes that the actions taken by the Ukrainian authorities violate the sovereignty of Mali, go beyond the framework of foreign interference, already condemnable in itself, and constitute a clear aggression by Mali. Support for international terrorism is a flagrant violation of international law, including the Charter of the United Nations. The transitional government of the Republic of Mali strongly condemns Ukrainian aggression and denounces this hostility of the Ukrainian authorities, contrary to the position of neutrality observed by Mali, which has always called for a peaceful settlement of the crisis opposing the Russian Federation to Ukraine. In addition, the transitional government of the Republic of Mali fully adheres to the diagnosis established by the Russian Federation, which has nevertheless warned the world for years about the neo-Nazi and savage nature of the Ukrainian authorities, today allies of international terrorism, far from the aspirations of peace and stability of the Ukrainian people. Following the acknowledged and assumed involvement of Ukraine in the aggression characterized by Mali, the transitional government of the Republic of Mali decides on the following measures. 1. The immediate termination of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Mali and Ukraine, the latter whose destinies are unfortunately entrusted to puppets confusing the international scene and the theater stage. I repeat, 1. The immediate termination of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Mali and Ukraine, the latter whose destinies are unfortunately entrusted to puppets confusing the international scene and the theater stage. Mali's government viewed this incident within a larger context of foreign interference and neo-colonial ambitions, accusing certain actors of using terrorist groups to destabilize the region.
That's a fact.
This aggressive stance by Ukraine, they argue, is part of a sinister plot to undermine the sovereignty and socio-economic development of Sahel states.
See, that's not
Despite
the point.
these,
How do Ukraine know how to get in touch with the terrorists? How do Ukraine know how to get in touch with the terrorists? How did they know the routes to take not to be detected by the Mali or the Burkina Faso or the Niger militaries? How did they know? Because the French and the Americans knew. This was a NATO operation. I'm so glad these African nations calling their ass out and standing on business, won't let white supremacists come to their country and kill them. Them days is over with.
these aggressive acts, Mali remains steadfast. Alongside Burkina Faso and Niger, the Confederation of Sahel Alliance states vows to continue their march towards sovereignty and self-determination. This unity is seen as a bulwark against external threats, reinforcing their commitment to peace and stability in the region. I repeat for the last time. 1. The immediate termination of diplomatic relations between the Republic of Mali and Ukraine, the latter whose destinies are unfortunately entrusted to puppets confusing the international scene and the theater stage. 2. The referral to the competent judicial authorities following the remarks of Mr. Andrei Yusov and Yuri Pivot-Verev, which constitute acts of terrorism and apology for terrorism. 3. Taking the necessary measures to prevent any destabilization of Mali from African states, particularly from Ukrainian embassies set up in the sub-region with terrorists disguised as diplomats. 4. Formally alerting regional and international bodies as well as states that support Ukraine by informing them that this country has openly and publicly displayed its support for terrorism. Consequently, Mali considers support for Ukraine as support for international terrorism.
See what happened?
Mali calls on the international community to take responsibility in the...
See what happened now? You see, Ukraine, they're losing so badly on the Ukrainian battlefield, so they start doing terrorism in Africa. They tried this in Sudan. They killed some Russians, killed some Sudanese, Africans. Nobody said nothing. Now they did it. They messed around and went to one of the revolutionary nations, the big three. They went to Mali. Now Mali is exposing anybody you heard of. Anybody supporting Ukraine is supporting terrorism. Salute. They're dealing with the terrorists. No more can the U.S. say those are rebels. No, those are terrorists that you say you was fighting, that Ukraine is now helping. You see, it's wide open. But like Mali said, they didn't intervene in Ukraine-Russia war. They was minding their business. The Ukrainians came to Mali and killed Malian soldiers. So now they can deal with the Ukrainians properly.
In the face of Ukraine's deliberate choice to support terrorism in a global context where there is unanimity on the imperative to combat this terrorism, Mali calls in particular on African states and peoples and those who are committed to peace to denounce these subversive actions that threaten the stability of the African continent. The transitional government of the Republic of Mali reiterates its thanks to the friendly countries of Mali that have
Revolutionary salute to our brother Warren Will for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, soldiers. Salute.
shown their solidarity in the face of the terrorist attacks perpetrated with the competition of foreign sponsors. The transitional government of the Republic of Mali notes that this aggression maintained by Ukraine is part of the broader pattern of certain actors who actively support and instrumentalize armed terrorist groups, allied with rebel groups for hegemonic and neo-colonial purposes, and to break the dynamics of emancipation, of reconquest of sovereignty, and socio-economic development initiated by the Conference of the States of the Sahel Alliance. The acts of aggression, far from achieving their objective, strengthen, on the contrary, the commitment and determination of Burkina Faso, the Republic of Mali, and the Republic of Niger within the framework of the Confederation of Sahel Alliance States to continue with more vigor their resolute march towards the strengthening of their sovereignty and the taking in hand of their destiny, for the happiness of the populations of these states. Mali bows before the memory of all the victims of insecurity in the Sahel and affirms that the crimes perpetrated will not go unpunished. May God bless Mali and the Sahel.
They will not go unpunished.
Bamako, August 4th, 2024. Following the news, Ukraine has unveiled a new lineup of jets to bolster its efforts against Russia, signaling
that's nonsense. Ukraine, them jets getting shot out the sky and blown up as we speak. Okay, let's look deeper into this situation right here. Wait, hold on.
Wagner soldiers have been unalived in Mali. What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing good.
See,
it's a beautiful
these
day.
are the same group of individuals. It's a bunch of them all throughout Africa who were slave trading in Libya too when they killed Gaddafi.
Thank you very much for choosing us again. We're going to jump into this very quickly because we need an African perspective. Do you remember Mali? You remember where Mali is? This is Mali. Great people, lovely situation. Now, in Mali, Wagner have been in Mali for the past couple of years to help them fight terrorists. And these terrorists are Tuaregs. That's the ethnicity. They don't quite look like this. They look very Arab. Okay? So the military were patrolling and going through the motion, and they were ambushed by these people. They were ambushed in a way that Wagner lost so many people. It was catastrophic. The Malian military also lost so many men, equipment, and many other things were taken away. They destroyed many things. We won't show you everything because we're going to get sanctioned. Unfortunately, we're going to try to open a private channel where you guys can see, document that cannot be published on YouTube. So why is Wagner in Mali? And why do the Tuareg attack Wagner? The Tuareg look Arabs, and they attacked Wagner that's working with the Malian government. We're going to try to understand here very quickly. We're going to try to find out very quickly. Now, they say, apparently, the West organized that because the way they beat the Russians and the Malians, it was too bad. It was just not possible from an army that is not trained or from an army that doesn't have the equipment necessary. The way this happens, it cannot just be the Tuareg by themselves. So now we're going to try to find out who was behind this, who was behind the attack. So the Tuareg in 2012 left Libya after President Mohammed Gaddafi was unalived. They left Libya with weapons, lots of weapons, and began a campaign of separatism in Mali. Basically, they wanted a part of Mali to create their own country. Obviously, the Malians did not want that. They want to keep the country together. But these guys were fighting.
Hold on, revolutionary salute to our brother World Raven. Say salute King White for the news the revolutionaries can use. I appreciate the donation to the war chest, brother. Revolution is a way of life. Appreciate the love, family. Salute. Now, remember, when they killed Gaddafi and the Tuareg rebels seized a bunch of the weapon stores in Gaddafi, that's why they were so well armed. They didn't just go seize territory in Mali. They wouldn't try to seize territory in Burkina. They did seize territory in Burkina Faso. They conquered Timbuktu. They were seizing territory in Niger. They just they start kidnapping in Nigeria. They just start waging jihadist war up under the umbrella of Al Qaeda on Africa. And it was none of this going on until they killed Gaddafi.
Ferociously, in a way that they became rebels. They were trying everything they could to destroy there, with the objective of taking a part of Mali and make it their own country. Now, The Malian government was really struggling with them at the time. They received the offer from the French. The French government said, we can come to your country and help you fight these rebels and upkeep peace. The Malian government allowed it.
Now,
French soldiers.
That was a scam. Now the French, the Germans, the British, the Americans told Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, oh, you know what? We can help y'all fight these rebels. Now the irony of it is they caused this. Why you didn't fight them in Libya? You was killing Gaddafi. Why you didn't kill these jihadist rebels while they was in Libya? Because you didn't want them to. They did exactly what they wanted to do. They herded them. If you look where Libya at, they allowed them to steal out of Gaddafi's massive weapon storages and herded them to our Africa. Okay, then that's the point. If you understand about war, what do you see in Ukraine right now? You see the West have to constantly resupply Ukraine. Who the fuck has been resupplying these terrorists? Gaddafi was killed in 2011, fam. That's been a long war. The West has been supplying these weapons. You already have Mali, Burkina Faso, Mali, and other African nations saying they didn't see the same shit that was happening in Syria. It happened in Afghanistan. They didn't see Black Hawks and other U.S. military and French U.S. Air Forces dropping off packages to these terrorists, bro. Weapon storages, weapon lockers, keeping them in this fight. And always remember, the jihadists go right to where the resources at and try to conquer gold mine, oil fields, uranium mine. What the hell are they going to do with that stuff?
To Mali to try to fight the rebels, and it was a very long story. And obviously, it was not for free. You know, you think the French were going to leave France and come and fight your fight for free? Obviously not. So many people believe Mali for France was a strategic location because of its location along the Niger River and its rich natural resources. French colonial authorities sought to exploit these resources through the establishment of agricultural plantation, mining operation, and forced labor. So French soldiers came into Mali.
Now imagine that. Oh, while we're here, why don't we get some of these? It's just so disgusting what the French and Americans was doing while they was there. And they supposed to be NATO superpowers, but they said they could never defeat the rebels.
Fight the Tuareg. The Tuareg are these people that came from Libya looking to cut Mali into two parts and create their own country in the north. As the years went, it became very, very difficult. And these Tuareg became very confident and very brave. And in 2015, they did an attack on Radisson Hotel in Mali. That was horrendous. Now, fast forward 2021, Mali decided to kick out the French soldiers because they felt like French soldiers were not moving forward. They were not finishing the problem. I mean, when you go to a doctor because you have a headache or a tummy that's hurt, and 10 years later, you still have a headache, are you going to still go to the same doctor? You probably won't, okay? You probably will try to find another doctor for a second advice. You know what I mean? So that's exactly what the Malians did. They said to French, we love you very much, but we feel like this not ending war has to end at some point. Some people believe French soldiers were getting a lot of money through gold and many other minerals that they were accessing.
They've been busted with getting gold, getting the UN drones then dropped out the sky in Congo. They've been busted with money, weapons, and gold inside of them. These people have been smuggling up out of Africa. These are conquerors, just like the ancestors. They didn't come in there to help nobody.
Through this mayhem. And some experts feel like, well, if you accessing gold through this fight against the rebels, would you really want to leave this country because the rebels are not there anymore? Probably not, if that's the only way you make money. You know, or if you're very happy, very content with the money you're making, you probably want to stay longer, right? So you can make more money. And many people feel like the reason why the war against the rebels were not ending by the French, France that's supposed to be a very strong military power, if the war was not ending, if they were not crushing the Tuareg rebels, it's because they were also profiting from that instance, from that lack of stability. Now, in 2021, the Malian government say France must leave. All stationed French soldiers that were in a group named MINUSMA should leave the country. They then left the country. And after they left the country, Mali changed many things. They discouraged the use of French as the language. They discouraged the use of French as songs or the French culture. And remind you that Mali was colonized by France. And in most countries where France was the colonialist, they taught them the way of life. So you're going to express yourself in French. You're going to eat like a Frenchman. You're going to think like a Frenchman. And many people, the newest generation, accepted those values as theirs because obviously your parents were beaten up. You don't know anything else besides what you were instructed to learn. Now, the Malian new government from 2021 wants to reverse that. The government wanted to promote more Malian content, more Malian thinking and everything. Let's get back on track. Now, the relationship between France and Mali is definitely not good because France was kicked out of Mali, followed by Burkina Faso, and Niger lately kicked out France. That's only signified that the interest of France in Africa is being lost. Therefore, it is in the interest of France to do whatever he can to get that power back. Now, many people are very curious to know who really attacked Wagner in Africa with the Malian army. Who unalived Wagner? So many Wagner agents and Malians. Let's see. This man has something very interesting to see. Let's watch.
Now, I want to show you this. This is from the Kiev Post, who obtained a photo, what they say is Tuareg rebels displaying the Ukrainian flag.
Tuareg rebel displaying the Ukrainian flag. Let's go. It still doesn't mean anything. Let's see.
Now let's do a little zoomy in here, and I want to point out some details to you that I find intriguing. Now, Tuareg rebels, right? These guys are ideological, untrained fighters. Notice that they carry their weapons all in actually kind of a uniform way, right? Across with the barrels pointed up, right? It's literally uniform. But make note about this guy. This is a dude who appears to be pretty pale-skinned for a Tuareg rebel, for a northern Algerian or a southern Algerian Malian. He also is carrying his weapon barrel pointed down with his finger very prominently off the trigger. This is something you would expect from a Western trained soldier or law enforcement officer. Someone with pretty extensive Western training. You may notice another detail. His face is blurred out.
His face is blurred out.
This man's face not blurred out. This guy's face is blurred out, sure. But so is this guy. Oh yeah, and so is this guy. Again, one of the only men wearing a polo shirt.
Polo shirt from a Tuareg. Interesting. Polo shirt?
Right? You notice khakis. Not a lot of khaki wearing. Almost every Tuareg rebel is wearing some camo pants. But this guy, khakis. This guy, face uncovered, sure. Khakis. Notice this man, khakis and kicks. Right? Notice this guy too. Also appears very pale for a Malian. And again, kicks and no camo to be seen. So I point this out. Oh yeah, here's one other dude also rocking a polo shirt. These tend to, I look at this and I see that there's just a little bit more people at work here. Maybe the Ukrainians, sure, certainly. Wouldn't shock me if you told me it was the French. Wouldn't shock me if you told me it was Americans.
Now, that is an American army officer who lies about what's going on in Ukraine. He made that video to really brag about Ukrainians or NATO helping. What they're now trying to call rebels. No, those are terrorists. And the reason we won't let them call them rebels is because you just said you was over there fighting them. America, you were saying they were terrorists. French, you said they were terrorists. Now that you've been kicked out the country, now you're helping them. You've been helping them all along.
Very interesting, as you can see. Is it the French? Yeah, I mean, you could see. The men said it's all. These men are very pale. And you can clearly see their military training is very different. All the Tuareg soldiers are carrying their weapons up. And this man, in a very prominent manner, has got his finger outside the trigger, just like the Western. I mean, I've done weapons, I understand. And he's wearing khaki, and it's different. You can clearly see this. Okay, there's nothing to add on to that. Very clear. So this was orchestrated by somebody against Wagner Group. Wagner are a special force. Some people call them rebels. Mercenaries. Mercenaries are people that you pay to fight your war for you. Wagner's are Russians. They are under the umbrella of Putin. Who would want to arm Putin? Well, it's very simple. Currently, nobody in the West likes Putin. The French don't like Putin because Vladimir Putin has moved into African nations that used to be Francophone. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger used to be sort of partners. Some people say controlled by France. But now Russia is running the show. Now, Americans are not very good friends with Putin, with the struggle of power, who's going to be the leader of the world. Now, number three, Ukraine is not friend with Putin because of the war happening in Ukraine. Now, we have something very interesting here. Who are these people who have attacked Wagner? Now, we know that in March 2024, the Kiev Post reported that Ukrainian military intelligence was collaborating with Syrian rebels to launch attacks against Russian mercenaries in Syria. These operations targeted Russian forces stationed near the Golan.
There are no Syrian rebels. That's ISIS and Al Qaeda too. You see, they are aligning with ISIS and Al Qaeda all over the battlefield, and that's why ISIS attacked Russia. See, they're making it clear now.
Right. So the Ukrainians have cooperated with the Syrian rebels to attack Russians in Syria. So Ukraine very clearly is doing a very interesting job of intelligence. The goal is to hit Russia because Russia has invaded Ukraine in some way. Russia doesn't believe to have invaded Ukraine. Ukraine says Russia has invaded Ukraine. So they're going to hit Russia whenever it's possible. And also what's very clear in this story is somebody admitted that the Ukrainians hit the Russians in Mali. Watch.
The fact that the rebels received the necessary information that allowed them to conduct a successful operation against Russian war criminals, the whole world has already seen this. In principle, this can be commented on. We certainly will not disclose any details, but let's say there will be a continuation. This is sensitive information. Therefore, everything that Ukraine does is happening within the limits and within the framework of international law, taking into account all the necessary procedures.
So as you can see, the war is not in Ukraine only anymore. It's the beginning of the world war.
International law, they can kill Russians and Malian soldiers in Mali. That's a damn lot. But what they did is opened up now Mali can absolutely send troops to battle with Russia against them. That's what Ukraine did. Is they fucked up, and Burkina Faso on it and Niger on it too. They want to fuck with the new superpower. Then damn it, they finna get what they looking for.
Well, wherever the interests of the Russians are, it doesn't matter who you are. They hit the Malians. So the Ukrainians were ready to hit both Russians and the Malians. It's a little bit like saying, if you friend with my enemy, it means you're my enemy. I'm gonna hit you too. It's very clear. That's what Ukraine has done.
They scared. Ukraine was looking for Russians. Well, the Russians are fighting you. They know where the Russians is at, but they're losing horribly. So what do? They want to go hide out with terrorists and ambush the Russians other places because they're losing horribly. They're not looking for no goddamn Russians. They want to ambush them. They don't want to face them like men.
And to find rebels who are enemies of Malians because Malians have welcomed Russia in their country. So again, you see it, fellas, Tuareg soldiers have attacked both Wagner and Malian soldiers. And
let's look deep into this, but it's not just because now that Nigeria, y'all see it's a revolution in the air in Nigeria, and the Nigerian people is protesting and they trying to overthrow the president. He is a boule puppet. I tell you, this was gonna happen everywhere, and Nigeria is definitely one of the countries that need to happen. But I'm gonna show video later of the Nigerian people in the street with the Russian flags. Every country that this done happened, the military done overthrew the president, and Russia then stepped in to help him. Is Nigeria probably gonna be next too? But here's the Mali Prime Minister talking about what happened.
Take a listen at the Malian Prime Minister Choguel Kakala Maiga vow that the Malian military may lose the battle, like how they lost in Tinzouten on July 27, 2024. But will ultimately win the war on terrorism despite the foreign support that terrorists are getting, as he sends a passionate message to Malian armed forces and Wagner soldiers following that sandstorm ambush that left dozens of Wagner fighters and some Malian soldiers dead.
See,
this is a message that he delivered.
In the West don't understand because you helped slaughter Russian soldiers. This is going to harden the Russian military to give these African nations more advanced weapons. And they're going to send more troops, But terrorists are just lashing out because they're getting humiliated in Ukraine. The terrorists of NATO.
Delivered on the Wednesday of July 31, 2024, as he presided over the Pan-African Women's Day, or rather Africa's Women's Day, that is observed annually across the African continent on July 31st to recognize and affirm the role of women's crucial participation in achieving the political freedom of Africa.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, current events require me to tell you about the campaigns of aggression, disinformation and intoxication against our country,
d'agression, de désinformation et d'intoxication contre notre pays, les pays de l'AES,
and the countries of the AES since we decided to take our destiny in our hands.
Le 16 juillet dernier,
On July 16th,
j'ai passé
I went to the opening of the General Assembly of the Mali notary profession.
J'ai tenu un discours pour expliquer
I gave a speech to explain to the whole world that the AES is not a figment of the imagination, that the presidents did not just wake up, then took their planes, went to Niamey, sat down and signed an agreement. That it was not like that, but rather it was the result of maturation. Do you know that I watched this video 2 days later, and there were 270,000 views worldwide? That means there is a need for explanations and understanding. Because we have poisoned the people, that oh yes, the soldiers have come together to set up a confederation. This is the campaign in the world. The other one, there is a friend who sent me the same video from a European country, where there is an advisor to the president after seeing this video, came to tell him that, I did not know that it was like that, everything we were told was not true. I said, but it's because you are misleading people. So our role is to raise awareness among the population so that people understand what is happening in our countries. This is the very example that I was saying, that when a soldier shoots, he shoots 1 or 2 people. But when you speak to explain something, it is thousands of people that you reach at the same time. I said this so that everyone understands that at these precise moments, we must commit ourselves against the intoxication against our defense and security forces. Expertly orchestrated by those who we know take turns around the world. We have to remain vigilant at all times and continue to deconstruct the narrative that consists of saying that we are not capable of taking care of ourselves. In any case, as far as I am concerned, you will have noticed it for months. I do not miss any opportunity to recall the importance of knowing our history to build our future. This requires above all mental deconstruction and decolonization of minds everywhere. I think I recall the crucial role of our defense and security forces, of our valiant soldiers who night and day under the burning sun, in the rain, in the freezing cold in the north, without rest, far from their families, fight at the cost of their lives so that we can come together like this afternoon. And that is why I ask you and beyond that all Malians to join me in praying for the transitional authorities and saluting the bravery of our defense and security forces who have restored to our people their honor, their dignity, and their sovereignty.
That's right.
Son honneur, sa dignité, sa souveraineté. Notre pays, mesdames et messieurs,
our country, ladies and gentlemen, has today regained its dignity. All Africans are watching us. All blacks, wherever they are, even in faraway countries, are watching and hoping that Mali succeeds. Even as we gather here, our soldiers are fighting against outlaws, often at the cost of their lives. That is why I call them manettes. Some think it is to flatter, but that is not flattery. There are manettes. Yes, there are manettes. Ladies and gentlemen, our prayers to all those who fell on the field of honor, as I often say, we will never forget them. We will make sure that their descendants are proud of them. In a few years, in 10 years, in 20 years, In 1,000 years, their children and grandchildren will come to say one day on dedicated places that I am proud of my great-grandfather. I am proud of my grandfather, of my father, because he gave his life so that I can come today to meditate proudly. In everything we do, ladies and gentlemen, let us think of them. They need our support in every place at all times. They need to know that we are behind them in a sacred union. I have always said this message to the farmer. I said it when we took the city of Timbuktu, which is such a big city that we took, and it was not easy. Because Mali's adversaries told everyone that the Malian leaders are bragging, that they will not be able to drive out the foreign forces. They put all their forces into it. Indeed, there were several assaults, but our soldiers heard a message. We told them that we will never lose the war against terrorism. We can lose battles, and that is what often happens. The military will lose battles, but they will win the war. We will win it because our fight is right historically and politically. We will win. In Tinzaouten, it is called a battle. But we will win the fight. We'll be Malian. All Mali will be Malian state. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to send this message to our soldiers. Be proud, those who will fall, you will not die for nothing. You will die for your people. Others will die in hospitals here, we do not even know who they are. But you will be remembered one day. Those who will have left, you will have given your blood so that we are worthy, so that we can speak. We are in this room today, but at Tinzaouten we cannot make a room like this, or hold meetings. It is because some are sacrificing themselves there. They have the right to all the honors and the necessary support, the support of their grandmother, of their mother, of their wives, of their children, and of all Malians. We will win this battle, inshallah. We will win it. The entire Kidal region, the entire Republic of Mali will return to the fold of the Malian state. Inshallah. The Malian army will win, since their fight is just. The few propaganda images that we see are intended to demoralize us. They will not succeed. They do not know the Malians. We have lost thousands of men. That has not stopped us from moving forward. And we will continue to move forward. As I said, this fight, we will win it back. I would also like to greet our friends. You know, we say it's in hardship that we truly know our friends, and I add that friends are like stars. We see them in the darkness. When everything is dark, that's when you see the stars.
That's right.
Friends are like that. Those who are with us today must know that they are with a people who will never forget them.
See them in the dark.
We are not an ungrateful people. Those who shed their blood today for Mali, their people, their government, their leaders must know they died for a great people.
Come on, man. The Russians dying over that.
They died to seal our friendship forever.
Feed imperialism.
That we need to get out of this situation of vassalization in which some wanted to keep us. And we are aware that it is with the support of our friends that we will succeed in this battle, which is uncertain. That is why I say that we will never forget them. They do not have to be discouraged. This battle is in our hands to win it. We are going to take all of Mali, inshallah. The other message is to the political class. I saw on networks people who called rejoicing at certain macabre images that they saw. Be careful. We are all being manipulated. We have made ourselves clear, do not let yourselves be manipulated. They want to keep you in slavery. I have seen communiques from certain parties. They have it signed by a person they do not even know. It seems that the great leaders who are known will first have their signatures on the declarations. The army goes above declarations and rulers, whoever comes. The army goes above the governments, whoever comes to power will need a strong army. And sir, my message to the political class is, be united in a sacred union of our army. The recovery of Tinzouten is not a story of Assimi Goita or Choguel Maiga or the government, or of Sadio Kamara. It is a Mali affair. If it is recovered, if Mali is recovered today, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, it is other men who will be there, and they will take care of development. Because the danger will have been pacified and unified. I would then like to say to those who support the terrorists to be very careful. We have great lessons that we have learned from history. Leaders pass, the people will be there. No terrorist movement can flourish, arm itself, equip itself to attack, or acquire weapons if it does not have a rear base. Those who serve as a rear base for terrorists, let them be careful, let them meditate on the lessons of history. It is true, often between states there is no recognition. But the Malian people are a blessed people. All the leaders of all the countries who engage in plots to destabilize Mali, they will pay for it.
Ukraine, France, US, Germany, Britain, NATO.
We have seen leaders here who wanted to make Mali their political business to gain power. I will not name them. Where are they today? Missing. There are leaders who make combinations. I know that their people are not in it. They are leaders, the people are not in these combinations. Be careful, leave us alone. Whoever does not leave us alone, God will punish him. I am convinced of that. And besides, these last 30 years show it, about all those who got involved in the war in Mali. Even when they claimed to be friends, they paid for it. And those who are in this game are also going to pay for it, inshallah. Because they are waging a bad war, and some are committing historical and political ingratitude. The terrorists who come to destroy Mali must not have certain countries as a fallback point. Because these movements cannot prosper if there is no fallback country. So be careful and leave us in peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the transitional president often reminds us that the people are the center of gravity of our governance. Let us ensure that each of us at our level of responsibility can have as our credo the people as the center of gravity. We must be exclusively at the service of the people. When the leaders pass, as I said earlier, the people remain. And as I have often said in a country, if you want the country to be stable, there are 3 benchmarks. You have God who is for everyone. You have the people and the laws, and when the laws are not good, we change them. Let's not work outside the laws. All the regimes where people started to work outside the laws, they have had a short lifespan. And we decided in the transition to do everything in accordance with the law. That is why I am sure that as the government of rectification, the transitional authorities will succeed in their mission. It is a sacred mission, a historic mission, and will succeed by responding to the call of the people. Everything we do must be done through the laws. Humans, ladies and gentlemen, always have an agenda, but God has his agenda which often coincides with that of humans. But when it does not coincide, it is always God's agenda that prevails. In a country that I do not want to name, people believe themselves to be so powerful that all the combinations in the world have been made. Even lawyers have been put in prison. The laws have been violated with the support of certain foreign powers. We have never heard of ECOWAS, but God imposed his agenda. The next day we witnessed a flight without honor. The great lesson for all those who are against us is to hold back. Our people are today in accordance with God's agenda. It is God who wanted this team to arrive at the head of the country. It is God who wanted us to remove these wooden yokes, to emancipate ourselves, to recover our land, to support our army and its leaders for the dignity of the Malian people. The function of a government is to facilitate, accompany and create the conditions for the emergence of excellence. This is what the transitional government is doing under the leadership of what some people say enlightenment. But that is far from the old leadership system. It is largely sufficient because it is the result that we judge. What is enlightened there is that there are many who have gone through the bush. Ours is an administration that does its job and things are clear for everyone. Under the leadership of the President of the Transition, Colonel Assimi Goïta. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I would like to reiterate the gratitude of the government to the ministerial delegations from Burkina Faso and Niger, in other words from the countries of the AES. It was simpler. Moreover, from now on, we will no longer cite countries, we will only say the countries of the AES, and our sister Republic of Guinea, for participating in the ceremony alongside their sisters from Mali. Thank you to all the international partners, for the different supports that were accorded to our ministry for the success of this ceremony. On this, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to solemnly government has strongly condemned Ukraine for its Senegalese embassy's pledge to support terrorist groups in the Sahel region and the recent praise of the Tinzaouattan attack on Malian soldiers and their Wagner counterparts that left dozens dead, by the Ukrainian ambassador to Senegal, who has so far been summoned by the Senegalese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Through the Burkina Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Captain Ibrahim Traoré administration warned Ukraine against the path it was taking, and called Kiev to pull itself together and not to make the wrong fight by supporting hostile forces that are enemies of the alliance of Sahel states. The press release that was issued on August 2, 2024 read that, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Cooperation and Burkinabes in Diaspora has learned with indignation the publication of a propaganda video by the Ukrainian army on the Facebook page of the Embassy of Ukraine in Dhaka, providing unequivocal support to the terrorist groups responsible for the cowardly and barbaric attack perpetrated between July 25 and 27, 2024 in Tinzaouattan in northern Mali, against the Malian armed forces. Burkina Faso strongly condemns this act of terrorism propaganda and is surprised that it is relayed by the Embassy of Ukraine in Dhaka. It calls on the responsibility of the international community in the face of the choice made by Ukraine, to support terrorism in a global context where unanimity is made on the imperative to fight this plague. Burkina Faso calls on peace-filled African countries in particular to denounce these subversive actions that threaten the stability of the continent. Burkina Faso reaffirms its unwavering support to the Malian armed forces in the fight for freedom and against international terrorism and its tentacles in the Alliance of Sahel States Confederation as well as throughout the African continent. Recalling the sacred principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of a sovereign state, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Cooperation and Burkinabes in Diaspora puts the Ukrainian government to its responsibilities and invites it above all to pull it together. Terrorist groups that massacre, kill, rape and loot in northern Mali and on the entire Sahelo-Saharan band, threaten international peace and security. Ukraine must not mistake combat and should refrain from any support of any kind to these terrorists, especially since the Confederate combat forces of the AES are silenced only by the sole concern of defeating the terrorism that is gangrenating our common space and threatening the African continent. It's to be noted that the Senegalese Foreign Ministry summoned the Ukrainian ambassador to Senegal due to his support for the Tuareg rebels after the Ukrainian embassy in Dakar published a video on its social media pages supporting the rebels in Mali. This was also after information emerging that Ukrainian instructors could have trained terrorists who attacked Russian and Malian military personnel.
This is taking place and has been taking place in Nigeria. Revolution is in the air, which I tell you is only a matter of time for the bootleg powers of Nigeria get overthrown. Kenya too, revolution will happen in Kenya. They putting aside one thing that's done kept all these nations in the hands of their masters, divide and conquer, tribal BS that had been able to conquer all these nations. So you see in all these nations, they're putting aside what tribe you in and coming together as a common cause, unity, overthrow bootleg puppet regimes. And here you have in Kenya, I mean in Nigeria, people hit the streets and they was waving Russian flags. Wherever we seen this happen, the military then overthrew the government and then brought in the Russians to help stabilize them and fight the imperialists. So Nigeria is definitely next. The puppet president of Nigeria, who is a criminal, a drug dealer who was busted in the U.S. for money laundering. Anybody can look that up. He's a CIA puppet. Barack Obama and them helped put this clown in power. That's serious business. Him and his handlers, the small hats. But he came out and denounced the people, which pissed him off, trying to incite the military to overthrow the government, because Nigeria has been ran by 7 different military coups. But he's saying that they shouldn't be inciting the military and that some military officials could be behind getting the crowds to do this. Yeah, the military had enough of his nonsense and want him to go so they can join BRICS and they tired of being puppets of Britain. Because
these are residents in Kaduna State on the day 5 of the End Bad Government protest, urging the military to immediately overthrow President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and take over power. This is a very, very disturbing situation, and it shouldn't have gotten to this. First thing is that this protest shouldn't have happened if we have a considerate and sympathetic president. But it's obvious that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is someone that his heart is hardened. He's bent on doing whatever he wants to do, irrespective of the consequence. And there is going to be a lot of consequence regarding this protest. It's going to cost a lot of things in this country. I can tell you for a fact that Nigeria is not going to remain the same after this protest. We don't even know when this protest is going to stop, but I can guarantee that this protest will not stop on the 10th day. The situation in the north is very, very peculiar. Allowing this protest to take place is going to worsen the situation in the north. The people in the north, they've been neglected by the government for a very long time, though they've held sway to power. But you all know that our politicians are the most soulless and wicked set of politicians we have in this country. The north, they've been waiting for this opportunity and they are using it to vent their anger. The population in the north make this protest more peculiar, and I can tell you these people are not ready to leave the street anytime soon. Even if the president finally meets the demands of Nigeria, the people in the north, they will not understand that the presidents have met their demands.
I think Nigeria is the most populous African nation, if I'm not mistaken. Is it 100 and some million Nigerians or 200 and some million? But it's the most, and they stand on one goal in its revolution. They all come together. See, this is a beautiful thing. They all come together, and they know if they can get the military to sit down with Putin, then they can straighten out the West, get their own riches, and do good business. They want to join BRICS. Russia doesn't trust them. China does not trust them as long as they got the boule in power to be joining BRICS. That's serious business.
Worrisome situation is the display of Russian flag in the north, especially in Kaduna State. The people are protesting with the Russian flag. It's very, very disturbing. Some persons are saying it's a military flag. Some are saying it's a Russian flag. I don't understand what a Russian flag is doing in Nigeria.
I do. You don't understand. You don't understand what cult figure do understand, because we watched it happen in Niger, and then they overthrew the French. The Russians stepped in. We watched it happen in Burkina Faso, then they overthrew the French and Americans, and then the Russians stepped in. We watched this happen in Mali, where the people hit the streets with their flag and the Russian flag, and then they kicked the puppets out, kicked the imperialists out, and then the Russian military came in. So this channel could act like I don't understand why the Russian flag is there. Well, we do understand. The people want to be free, and they know Putin is willing to give. I told you, if you stand up for your freedom and you're willing to fight, then Putin will arm your government. He will arm the revolutionaries to help to handle business. So revolution is definitely hitting Nigeria. There's nothing who they can do about it. Yeah, you mean why the Russian flag there? Look at them waving the Russian flag. That's the flag of revolution right now. It is business.
Umar tudun wada duk garin Kaduna ba kamar tudun wada karshe ne. Gaskiya tudun wada karshe ne. Kura uba. Kuma gura elena bu. Kalau cubo. Ba kamar tudun wada. Kura uba ce. Kai. Wallahi ƙarya ne. Juba ba wuro. Tudun wada karshe ne. Kura uba. Hambura, kai suna da yawa fa, kamar uba.
Best time to have stopped this protest was when it has not started. Now that this protest has started, it will definitely spiral out of control, and definitely non-state actors and some politicians will hijack this protest. Having a Russian flag being displayed in Kaduna State is all nothing but sponsored. Whatever is happening in Nigeria currently, Bola Ahmed Tinubu should be held responsible. And whatever will happen after this protest, of course, something negative will definitely come out from this protest. Bola Ahmed Tinubu should equally be held accountable. He had an opportunity to stop this protest before it started, but he refused. Now the protest started and he thought it was a child's play. He equally had an opportunity to stop it again when he gave a recorded broadcast, but he refused. It shows that Nigerian politicians, they don't care about this country. They are not patriotic about this country. All they are patriotic about is what they will get away from this country. They don't even care if this country burn, because there is no reason why this protest should get into the 5th day. There are politicians that will not allow these things to go on. It has gone out of control. There's been a lot of intimidation from the police. There's been a lot of destruction of properties. People have been killed by the security forces, and now they are displaying the Russian flag in the country, even asking the military to take over power. It shouldn't have gotten to this level. But then you know who our politicians are. They don't care if this country burn. As long as they are in power, they want to remain in power till infinity. Now asking the military to take over power. You all know that we are experiencing bad government. But the truth is that the military taking over power is not going to solve the issue in this country. Most people in this country are not patriotic. We've had the military taking over power before in this country, and they ruled for decades, and they were also responsible for destroying this economy. They destroyed the naira. They destroyed Nigeria economy. President Obasanjo, that took over from the military, had to do a lot of things in order to revive Nigeria economy. But it's quite unfortunate to see that Nigeria economy did not go from the direction that Obasanjo set it to go, and now we are at it again. Asking the military to take over power is not the solution to our problem. I can tell you, these guys are not patriotic. They are only patriotic to what they can steal and loot from this country. Military taking over power from this country, they are going to make the matter and the situation worse. Our military men are no longer military men. They are now politicians. These guys are feeding fat from politicians. Even if they take over power, they will focus their attention on stealing the oil. How do you think that we keep having oil theft in our oil industry? Of course, the security agencies are part of this stealing that is going on. Asking them to take over power, I can tell you, these guys, they will not remove their eye from looting. So the problem is not about the military taking over power. So we should be careful as to what we demand in this country. The problem is that whatever we are doing, we should have a system that works, and we can make that work in our democracy. But it's quite unfortunate that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that took over power from the back door, does not want to make himself a hero. Bola Ahmed Tinubu could have become the hero of Nigeria democracy, but yet he's making himself a villain. Well, we are in this situation currently now, and I don't know who is going to stop what is happening. That broadcast he gave on Sunday, that recorded speech he gave on Sunday, has definitely exacerbated the issue. It has angered so many more persons, and they've hit the street again. All over the country, the protest is currently going on. The people are not relenting. That broadcast was not meant to happen. Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not meet the demands of the protesters. And he did not even address issues on ground, especially police brutality on innocent protesters. You all saw what is happening in the UK. People are protesting in the UK, but they are not protesting based on what we are protesting here in Nigeria. And they are attacking security forces. But you will never see the security forces retaliating or hitting them back, but rather they are arresting them calmly. And you will never see the security forces carrying guns or even tear gas in a protest ground. So why are the security agencies carrying guns and tear gas in the protest ground? And Bola Ahmed Tinubu is seeing all of that and keeping quiet and even blaming the protesters for causing what is happening in his country. It's going to be an unfortunate situation in the next coming days. It's unfortunate we don't have a government. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Well, we want to turn our attention now to the West African nation of Nigeria. For those who have not been seeing, a wave of protest has swept Nigeria today, perhaps a wave of more protest over the coming days under the hashtag #InBadGovernance and also Revolution Now. So a lot happening in Nigeria, and we are very, very honored to have here on the show to talk about this by David Hundeyin, who's a Nigerian investigative journalist and author. David, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. And let me just start maybe with some framing. Perhaps people saw some photos of protests coming out, but what are sort of the proximate issues that have ignited this protest wave there in Nigeria?
So there are multiple issues. There's sort of multiple subgroups that have sort of coalesced into a bigger protest movement. But the basic underlying issue that seems to unify everyone is the understanding that Nigeria is going through an unprecedented crisis of bad economics, basically. To put it in context, as at 2014, 10 years ago, Nigeria was rated as Africa's largest economy with a GDP of about $510 billion. 10 years later, Nigeria's population has increased, but Nigeria's GDP now stands at about $280 billion. So Nigeria's GDP has effectively halved in 10 years, while its population has gone up. So Nigeria's per capita income has more than halved in the space of 10 years. Already, it wasn't a particularly wealthy country in per capita terms, but now it's at disastrous levels. To put it in further context, of Nigeria's estimated 210 million people, about 135 million are estimated to be living in multi-dimensional poverty, which is about 65% of the country's population. So to put that in context, there's no other African country which has a population of up to 135 million. So that 135 million of Nigerians who are living in multidimensional poverty, that in itself is a population segment that is bigger than any other African country. So there's a huge groundswell of public anger to tap from. This is then further complicated by the fact that the new government, which came into power last year, which, as you may or may not know, is very much a US-backed government, has made absolutely no attempt whatsoever, as far as it is possible to tell, to create any sort of dent in this sort of ongoing economic disaster going on. And in fact, it is very much the case that the presidency and the executive arm of government seems even more determined to act as if the good times are rolling. So one of the stories that has caused a lot of controversy this year has been the decision of the president to buy a new presidential jet. To put that in perspective, the Nigerian presidency already has the largest presidential jet fleet in Africa. Has a larger presidential jet fleet than many European countries. Bear in mind, this is a country with a per capita GDP, per capita income of roughly $1,500 a year, right? And at a time when there's a huge public finance crisis, an estimated roughly 80 to 87 cents of every dollar made by Nigeria is going on debt servicing, debt repayments, right? And at the time of austerity measures, because as you know, Nigeria has also had to approach the IMF and the World Bank multiple times, and the Nigerian naira, that's the currency, has roughly halved in the space of a year in terms of its value against the US dollar. So about a year ago, it was roughly about 800 naira to a dollar. Now it's about 1,500 naira to a dollar. And in the space of all of this, the president announces that his priority is to get a new Airbus private jet. The country then spends another 21 billion naira on a new residence for the vice president, who wasn't exactly homeless to begin with. So it then becomes clear to the people that it almost seems as if the government and the governed are living on two different planets, because on the ground, people are suffering in a very, very real, very, very visceral way, suffering to the extent that even food, like actual nutrition, has become a problem. And something like 65% of Nigerian household income now goes on food alone, right? So that should give you an idea of just how serious this problem is. Like, this is not a hypothetical numbers problem. This is a very real problem. People are literally holding banners saying we are hungry. That's not a huge expression of discontent. That's a literal statement of fact. People are functionally malnourished because of how bad the economy is right now. And yet you have this sort of great big cavernous government which sort of sits at a great height and almost seems as if it lives on a different planet to the rest of the country. So these are just some of the issues.
Wow. I mean, it's really important to understand all that context, given the fact that this is a very close ally of the U.S., this government in Nigeria, and is often touted as the way that an African country should be. And I'm just curious, when we talk about what's happening in Nigeria, what has there been, I should ask it this way, has there been any perhaps influence or inspiration taken in what's been happening in the Sahel over the last year or so, with all these different movements pushing out, and new governments rising, pushing out the French and the Americans, and basically trying to impose their own sovereignty on their countries. And obviously Nigeria has been used by the US to kind of push back against that. But has any of those changes across West Africa influenced people's views about what they're able to perhaps do in their own country of Nigeria?
Absolutely have. So specifically the coup which happened last year in Niger, which is Nigeria's immediate northern neighbor, has had a definite impact, because I think prior to that coup, most Nigerians sort of thought of Niger as this sort of 37th state of Nigeria, not a very significant country in the eyes of most Nigerians. Didn't really understand how it was even a strategically important country in geopolitical terms. And then the coup happened, and the flurry of international attention that came with it. And then more importantly, the fact that afterward, Nigeria has since become Africa's top performing economy in the space of, in a situation where it ordinarily is expected to be in chaos. It's doing 11% economic growth, which that's the sort of economic growth numbers Nigeria hasn't seen since maybe the 1970s during the oil boom, right? So that is then sort of creating a lot of questions and challenging a lot of assumptions, because some of the sort of successfully promoted assumptions in the Nigerian public space are that democracy, in the sense that it is promoted by the US embassy, basically, is a precondition for economic growth and prosperity. Well, here we have Nigeria, which on paper is a democracy, has all the paraphernalia of a democratic state, has all the institutions on paper, has the Freedom of Information Act, has all the bells and whistles, even though functionally it's Nigeria is actually classified as a hybrid authoritarian state, not a democracy, but it's treated as a democracy, especially by its foreign allies like the US. And people are starting to realize that, hey, these assumptions may not actually be true, because here, look at Niger, who we've never really thought of as consequential in any way. We've never really thought these guys are going anywhere, and all of a sudden they appear to definitely be going somewhere. You simply can't sniff at the fact that this is a country doing 11% annual economic growth. That those numbers are unfathomable to a Nigerian. So that definitely has raised some questions. And then, almost as importantly, the events in Kenya, which have happened or are still happening almost concurrently, have also had a very outsized impact, because in both the cases of Niger and Kenya, even though the manifestations have been different, but ultimately it would seem as if the target of the anger has actually been sort of two sides of the same coin. So in the case of Niger, it's been a sort of direct response to perceived colonial interests and activities in the Sahel region. In the case of Kenya, it's been a response to the perceived neo-colonial actions of the IMF. And the fact that the populations of these countries have been able to so successfully, so visually and so successfully oppose these things and have actually seen some results has created a significant amount of expectation in Nigerian public space that, okay, so if Niger, this sleepy next door neighbor of ours, has been able to do something, bear in mind that in the aftermath of what the things that happened in Niger, as you rightly said, Nigeria was used, or the attempt was made to use Nigeria as a sort of blunt force instrument to bludgeon them back into line. And that simply didn't work. Nigeria imposed some of the harshest sanctions possible for a country to impose on a much economically less powerful neighbor. Nigeria blockaded Niger's borders. Niger is a landlocked country. They didn't have access to the sea. They were effectively cut off from global trade. Nigeria shut off their electricity, which was in violation of international law. Technically, Nigeria committed war crimes, just to sort of bring them back into line. And at the end of the day, all this was to the net effect of absolutely nothing. The Nigerians are basically doing better than they were a year ago, as far as they're concerned, and are doing better than a significant part of the Nigerian population. And then the Kenyans were able to do their own sort of very visually successful resistance action. So these factors have sort of had a very outsized influence on the decision of Nigerians to come out and try to get something done.
I think this is a critically important point here, touching on the sort of geopolitics of it. And I want to, pick up on a point you made at the very beginning here of sort of this being a U.S.-backed government. And I know your own investigative reporting during the election was very much at the tip of the spear of some important factors. And when it seemed like, you correct me if you think I'm wrong here, the U.S. government was trying to help conceal certain information that could have had a significant impact on how Nigerians viewed the election and the vote. So talk, if you could, maybe about that specifically, but just in general, what the United States is hoping to get out of backing the current government of Mr. Tinubu.
So for those who may not be aware, the current president of Nigeria, who came to power last year in the sort of heavily disputed election, that's the president of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, used to be resident in the US and used to be a drug trafficker in the city of Chicago. He was active between the 1980s and the early 90s. And he was actually identified as a drug trafficker and as a money launderer, working on behalf of a heroin trafficking ring in Chicago by the US government. There was a multi-agency investigation involved in this investigation. So the IRS, the DEA, the FBI, and to a lesser extent, later on, the State Department and the CIA also got involved, because shortly after his involvement became clear, it also became, he had also started to have some involvement in Nigerian politics. So from the point of view of the US, rather than simply make this sort of mid-level or mid to high-level drug trafficker, international drug trafficker, pay for his crimes, I guess it was more expedient for the US government to use him for the purpose of international influence peddling, because this is someone who was at the time becoming more active in the Nigerian political space. Bear in mind, the US actually has form for doing things like this. So you recall recently the former president of, I believe it was Honduras, was extradited to the US on charges of drug trafficking. The story that I think is perhaps less told is that during the time when he was active as a drug trafficker or as a president with ties to drug trafficking, he was very much a US ally, and the US was very much aware of what he was doing. It was not a secret to them. They have some of the best intelligence networks on the earth. So there's nothing that was happening that was a secret to them, right? And it was expedient to use him as a pawn, as a tool at the time. And as soon as he was no longer useful, then we got these headlines. So Nigeria is currently pretty much where Honduras was maybe a decade ago, in that it's being ruled by someone who is, for lack of a better term, an American puppet, right? A stooge, because this is someone who has the perfect sort of blackmail material being held on him by the US government. So this wasn't entirely hidden at the time, because the results of the IRS leg of the investigation actually had some documentation in the public domain, which I was able to get hold of, and with which I was able to establish to a very large degree of certainty that this person who was running for president at the time has been at the very least indicted for heroin trafficking in the US. But then it quickly became very clear that the US government was willing to do incredible things to keep this information hidden. So at the moment, I'm still in court with 6 different US government agencies. So the IRS, the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, and the Executive Office of the US Attorneys. And there have been some incredible things that I have witnessed through the course of this FOIA lawsuit, where I've seen the US government telling lies in court to protect a foreign criminal. I didn't know such things were possible. It's been a real learning process, and as far as it's possible to tell, it's clear that the U.S. government, even from the wording of some of the privacy exceptions which have been used to prevent the release of this information in the public domain, there have been privacy exceptions that have been linked to national security. Somehow, it's in the national security of the U.S. to protect a foreign drug trafficker. Why and how exactly that is the case, I guess the US government is the only one that can answer that question. So basically, that's where Nigeria is right now. Nigeria is being ruled by a foreign criminal of Nigerian descent who has backing, or who had, at the very least, as recently as last year, had the backing of the US government. And it seems as if, based on that relationship that he has with the American authorities, he has been able to consolidate himself in power. And as you may have seen today, the sort of uprising against his very, very blatant misrule by the Nigerian masses has been met with incredible amounts of state violence. Usually when a protest like this sprouts, it usually doesn't sort of go up in flames on the very first day. But today alone, which is the very first day of the protest, no fewer than 11 people have been killed across the country. It looks like it's only going to get worse. And so far, it seems as if, well, the interests of the US government do not really seem to coincide with those of the Nigerian people. So it would seem as if this fight, the Nigerian people are sort of, we're in it on our own, basically.
Mm. Well, we will certainly continue to follow it, certainly through West Africa Weekly and your own
have demonstrated support for Burkina Faso, echoing the stance of Iran and Russia in viewing Burkina Faso's detachment from Western influences as beneficial. This move has not been well received by Western countries. There is dissatisfaction with President Traoré, who is driving these significant changes. Historically, the response from Western powers towards leaders who deviate from their preferences is well known. The looming question is whether history will repeat itself. Consider a country in Central Africa challenging global powers, forming new partnerships, and reshaping its future. Burkina Faso, led by Ibrahim Traoré, is charting a novel geopolitical course by aligning with South American and Russian allies. What has prompted this recent shift in Burkina Faso's foreign policy? This landlocked West African nation has been historically influenced by its former colonial powers. Under President Ibrahim Traoré, who assumed office in September 2022, Burkina Faso has started to reevaluate these historical connections. Traoré made a pivotal move on February 8, 2024, by expelling French military forces from the country, signaling a major shift in its geopolitical stance. This action was a deliberate stand against neocolonialism and aimed at achieving greater sovereignty, paving the way for new alliances, including with South American nations like Venezuela. The historical connection between Burkina Faso and France was established during the colonial era, with France maintaining considerable influence over the former colony. However, Traoré's administration aimed to sever these ties. The removal of French troops was not merely symbolic, but a calculated move to assert sovereignty and minimize external control. This decision struck a chord with other African nations grappling with similar post-colonial issues, positioning Traoré as a key advocate for genuine independence. Burkina Faso announced its intention to terminate a military agreement that permitted French forces to combat militants within its borders. This decision comes amid an insurgency by groups affiliated with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The government reported that it had suspended a 2018 military accord with France on January 18th, providing a one-month notice for the withdrawal of French troops. The following day, French President Emmanuel Macron requested further clarification from Transitional President Ibrahim Traoré. However, on Monday, Burkina Faso's government spokesperson, Rim Taubergen Emmanuelu Adriogo, stated that their position was already clear. The expulsion of French forces by Burkina Faso reverberated internationally, marking a significant step towards decolonization and self-determination that is increasingly gaining traction across Africa. Traoré's decision sparked a range of responses. Some applauded his courage, while others cautioned about the potential risks. This crucial moment set the stage for a new direction in Burkina Faso's foreign policy, aimed at forging partnerships with countries that align with its goals of sovereignty and economic self-reliance. In recent times, many African nations have struggled with the challenge of navigating relationships with former colonial powers while pursuing true independence. Traoré's action to remove French troops is part of a broader trend where African leaders are increasingly challenging neo-colonial influence in favor of fairer collaborations. This transition is viewed as a vital step towards long-term stability and growth. By distancing itself from France, Burkina Faso is asserting its autonomy and signaling to other African countries that reliance on former colonial powers is not the sole path to development. Traoré's administration is focused on building alliances based on mutual respect and shared goals, rather than maintaining ties rooted in past exploitation. As we delve further, we will examine the crucial alliances Burkina Faso is forming and their potential impacts. Let's start by discussing its relationship with Venezuela. How did this partnership come about? And what are the key elements of their alliance? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on culture, history, and identity. Now, back to the topic. The connection between Burkina Faso and Venezuela began to develop right after Traoré's decisive action to remove French troops. On February 8, 2024, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro reached out to Traoré, marking the beginning of a new phase in their relations. This outreach led to a significant meeting where Burkina Faso's Foreign Minister Jean-Marie Traoré and Venezuela's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Yvonne Gil, signed 20 agreements covering a wide range of sectors, including aeronautics, agriculture, civil protection, culture, sports, oil, education, and science and technology. These extensive agreements reflect a strong commitment to mutual growth and the strengthening of their partnership. Venezuela's support goes beyond economic cooperation, also including military assistance, underscoring a shared stance against imperialism. Minister Gil highlighted Venezuela's commitment to furthering its friendship with Burkina Faso and other African nations through South-South cooperation. Among the agreements, there are plans for a delegation of oil specialists and technicians from Burkina Faso to visit Venezuela, emphasizing the strategic value of their energy collaboration. This partnership enables Burkina Faso to leverage Venezuela's expertise in the oil industry, potentially enhancing its economic prospects. The agreements span a variety of sectors critical to the advancement of both countries. In aeronautics, there are initiatives for joint projects that could lead to technological improvements and better infrastructure. In agriculture, the focus is on exchanging knowledge to boost food security and local production. Cultural exchanges are designed to promote mutual understanding and strengthen the social bond between the two nations. Sports and education also feature prominently, aiming to foster strong, educated, and healthy communities. These areas are vital for sustainable national development and laying a solid foundation for future generations. Additionally, military cooperation is a key part of the partnership, with Venezuela offering military support to help Burkina Faso enhance its defense capabilities and maintain stability. This support forms part of a larger strategy to counter external influences and uphold national sovereignty. The importance of these agreements goes beyond immediate gains. They represent a commitment to a development vision that emphasizes sovereignty and self-reliance over dependence on traditional Western aid and investment. This partnership is indicative of a growing trend in South-South cooperation, where developing nations work together to achieve mutual growth and independence. With these alliances established, it's worth considering the broader international ramifications for Burkina Faso. The alliance with Venezuela is part of a broader network that includes South American countries and Russia. Historically, nations such as Cuba, Venezuela, and Argentina have aligned with Russia, particularly during the Cold War era. Prominent figures like Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, and Che Guevara were influential in advocating anti-imperialist movements, and their impact still resonates in modern politics. Venezuela's support for Burkina Faso continues this tradition. Aligning with anti-imperialist forces marks Burkina Faso's shift from traditional Western partnerships. Economically, these new alliances open up opportunities for growth in sectors such as energy, agriculture, and education. Support from nations like Venezuela and Cuba, which have strong connections with Russia, could significantly bolster Burkina Faso's military capabilities. This alliance might also influence regional dynamics in West Africa. Burkina Faso's shift away from Western powers towards alliances with South America and Russia could encourage other African countries to reassess their foreign policies. This might lead to a broader regional realignment, challenging the dominance of former colonial powers and their allies. Additionally, the strengthening relationship between Burkina Faso and Venezuela could serve as a model for other African nations to seek similar partnerships. This trend might contribute to a more multipolar world, where power is more evenly distributed across various regions, diminishing the influence of Western countries. Increased collaboration among countries in the global South could give rise to new economic and political blocs that challenge existing power structures and foster a more balanced global order. Burkina Faso's shifting foreign policy might also affect international organizations like the United Nations and the African Union, which may need to adjust to the evolving dynamics and address the needs and priorities of nations pursuing greater autonomy and resisting traditional power frameworks. The partnership with Venezuela and other South American nations underscores the significance of South-South cooperation. This approach prioritizes mutual support and shared benefits among developing countries, contrasting with the often hierarchical relationships seen with Western powers. South-South cooperation offers a platform for exchanging knowledge, resources, and development strategies, promoting more sustainable and inclusive growth. Additionally, Burkina Faso's geopolitical shift might impact global energy markets. By strengthening its relationship with Venezuela, a key oil producer, Burkina Faso could access valuable energy resources and expertise, enhancing its energy security and decreasing reliance on Western energy supplies. This development might influence global energy trends, encouraging other nations to diversify their energy sources and build more resilient energy systems. The international community and regional organizations have been attentive to Burkina Faso's new alliances. In particular, Western nations have responded by imposing sanctions on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, reflecting their concern over these new partnerships. These sanctions are intended to pressure these countries into reconsidering their alliances and returning to traditional Western partnerships. Recently, the military governments in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger announced their immediate exit from the regional economic community. The juntas criticized the bloc for imposing what they termed as harsh sanctions, designed to reverse recent progress in their countries. A joint statement, aired on state television in all three nations, claimed that the bloc had strayed from its founding principles and Pan-African ideals after nearly 50 years. The juntas argued that the bloc, influenced by external powers, had become a threat to its member states and their populations. This move comes amid escalating political tensions in West Africa, including a recent coup in Niger. The three nations have recently established a security alliance and cut military ties with France and other European countries, seeking support from Russia instead. Despite the sanctions, Burkina Faso has received significant backing from its new allies. On July 2, 2024, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro sent a delegation to Burkina Faso to reaffirm support from South America. This visit emphasized the strengthening relationship between the regions and their shared commitment to mutual development. The delegation met with Ibrahim Traoré, conveying military and diplomatic support for Burkina Faso. This marks a significant shift in Burkina Faso's foreign policy, moving from reliance on Western nations to a more diversified and self-reliant approach. This shift has sparked discussions both within Burkina Faso and among its allies regarding the best path forward. Some advocate for aligning with anti-imperialist forces as a strategic move, while others argue that maintaining Western ties is essential for economic stability. The Western-imposed sanctions have not swayed Burkina Faso from its new direction. On the contrary, they have reinforced Traoré's administration's determination to seek alternative forms of support and collaboration. Support from Venezuela and other South American nations has given Burkina Faso the resources and confidence to resist Western pressure. Regional organizations like the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have also responded to Burkina Faso's realignment. ECOWAS, which has traditionally been aligned with Western interests, has voiced concerns over Burkina Faso's shift. The organization has called for dialogue and reconciliation, stressing the need for regional unity and cooperation. The response from ECOWAS underscores the challenge of balancing regional stability with the respect for the sovereignty of individual member states. Burkina Faso's alignment with anti-imperialist forces disrupts the current power dynamics in the region and raises questions about the future of regional cooperation. ECOWAS faces the task of managing these complexities to prevent further destabilization while supporting its members' aspirations. The international community, including organizations like the United Nations, is also closely observing the situation in Burkina Faso. The UN has highlighted the need for peaceful conflict resolution and adherence to international norms and agreements. As Burkina Faso forges new alliances, the international community will be vigilant to ensure the nation remains committed to these principles. The reactions from various international and regional entities reflect the broader implications of Burkina Faso's geopolitical shift. While the country seeks to assert its sovereignty and establish new partnerships, it must also navigate the intricate landscape of international relations and ensure internal stability. The support from Venezuela and other allies offers a buffer against external pressures, but moving forward will require careful diplomacy and strategic planning. Given these developments, what are the potential future scenarios for Burkina Faso? The future of Burkina Faso's international relations depends on several crucial factors. President Ibrahim Traoré faces a significant choice: whether to maintain alliances with Venezuela, Cuba, and Russia, or reconsider and rejoin ECOWAS, which has closer ties with the US and France. The support from Venezuela and other South American countries opens up opportunities for Burkina Faso to gain new economic and military partnerships, potentially leading to increased investment in key sectors and enhancing the nation's development prospects. However, aligning with these anti-imperialist forces carries risks, including possible economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation from Western nations. On the other hand, re-engaging with ECOWAS and Western countries could offer more immediate economic stability and access to international aid. Yet this could also undermine Burkina Faso's goal of greater autonomy and resistance to neocolonial influences. Ultimately, President Traoré must carefully evaluate the advantages and drawbacks of each option, balancing long-term strategic interests with short-term economic and political pressures. The outcome of this decision will influence Burkina Faso's future and its role in the global arena. Moreover, if
revolutionary salute to our revolutionary brother Curtis Mitchell for the $4.99 donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. I absolutely appreciate the love, soldiers. Salute, family.
Traoré's approach succeeds, it could encourage other African nations to explore similar alliances and pursue more independent foreign policies. This shift could spark a wider movement toward decolonization and self-determination across the continent. Additionally, alliances with Venezuela and other South American nations might open up new economic opportunities. Collaborative projects in fields such as energy, agriculture, and technology could drive growth and job creation, advancing Burkina Faso's overall development. Sharing knowledge and expertise will be key to building a robust and self-reliant economy. However, the potential risks associated with these alliances should not be overlooked. Western-imposed economic sanctions could affect trade, investment, and access to international markets. Diplomatic isolation might also limit Burkina Faso's participation in global forums and its ability to influence international policies. Navigating these challenges will require careful planning and adept diplomacy. As Burkina Faso moves forward, it must also weigh the domestic impact of its foreign policy choices. Public opinion and support will play a crucial role in determining the success of its chosen direction. Engaging with civil society, building consensus, and ensuring transparency will be crucial for fostering national unity and resilience. Burkina Faso is at a pivotal moment with its future direction uncertain. Under Ibrahim Traoré's leadership, the nation has embarked on a significant journey towards asserting its sovereignty and forming new alliances. The removal of French troops and the subsequent partnerships with Venezuela and other South American countries represent a major shift in Burkina Faso's geopolitical approach. These new alliances open up possibilities for enhanced economic and military cooperation, but they also bring potential risks and challenges. The international community's response, including sanctions from Western nations, highlights the complexities and high stakes of this strategic shift. As Burkina Faso navigates this intricate situation, the choices made by President Traoré and his administration will define the country's path forward. Whether Burkina Faso continues to strengthen its ties with anti-imperialist allies or reverts to traditional Western partnerships, it is clear that the nation is on the verge of significant transformation. The future of Burkina Faso will depend on its ability to balance autonomy, development, and international relations in an evolving global landscape. Do you think Burkina Faso or any African nation
know that President Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso, the landlocked country in West Africa, is reaching for the stars with its space ambitions? The Burkina Sat-1 project, the nation's first satellite initiative, marks a significant milestone in Burkina Faso's journey towards technological advancement and innovation. This pioneering project aims to harness space technology to address critical issues like agriculture, water management, and climate resilience, showcasing Burkina Faso's commitment to sustainable development and scientific progress. You may be wondering when Burkina Faso started with this project, how, and why. In this video, we will lay it all bare for you. So, let's go along. Barring any obstacle, by the end of 2024, the first Burkinabe satellite, Burkina Sat-1, will reach space. The tests have already been successfully completed. The contract also signed with China for the
See, with the help of Russia and China, now these African superpowers, see, you need satellites. See, with satellites, then you could actually do military, have military power and military eyes in the sky. You can't get ambushed and things of that nature, and other scientific things you can do with these satellites that the West never was doing for any of these African nations.
The launch and deployment of the device in outer space. The satellite launch, which was slated for 3rd of May this year, suffered a delay because of technological reasons. We must now hope that the weather conditions are favorable to complete the process. That's the assurance given by the chief Burkinabe scientist, Frederick Ouattara, who is the instigator of the project in a recent press conference. Now, Burkina Faso is a diverse and vibrant country located in West Africa, bordered by 6 nations. Despite its rich cultural heritage and abundant natural resources, Burkina Faso faces significant economic challenges. Burkina Faso is part of the Sahel region, which is a semi-arid zone between the Sahara Desert to the north and the more fertile regions to the south. With a predominantly agrarian economy, the country grapples with issues such as food insecurity, limited access to clean water, and the impacts of climate change. In this context, technological advancement is crucial for driving development and improving the quality of life for its citizens. The Burkina Sat-1 project represents a strategic move towards leveraging space technology to overcome these challenges and propel the nation towards a more prosperous future. The Burkina Sat-1 project originated from the visionary efforts of Burkinabe scientists and the support of international partners. The project's primary goals include enhancing agricultural productivity, improving water resource management, and bolstering climate resilience through advanced satellite data. Burkina Sat-1 is a small, yet sophisticated satellite equipped with state-of-the-art sensors and imaging technology. These capabilities enable it to monitor crop health, track water bodies, and provide critical data for disaster management. A pivotal component of the project is the ground station at Norbert Zongo University, which serves as the control and data processing hub for the satellite, ensuring the efficient utilization of the collected data. According to reports from the country's local media, President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore of Burkina Faso announced the launch of the construction phase of the satellite following a media unveiling of the ground station built as Phase 1 milestone of the satellite construction project. The satellite project is led by Professor Frederick Ouattara, who won the Africa Award for Research Excellence in Space Science from the American Geophysical Union in 2018. Professor Ouattara is the president of Norbert Zongo University in Koudougou, where the newly built satellite ground station is located. The satellite will be built locally at the Norbert Zongo University with resources and talent sourced in-country and from the diaspora. The Burkina Sat-1 project has been made possible through the invaluable support and collaboration of international partners, including the University of Montpellier and the National Center for Space Studies from France, the Kyushu Institute of Technology from Japan, and the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, all of whom have contributed their expertise and resources to help realize Burkina Faso's space ambitions. The Burkina Sat-1 project has been a product of painstaking effort that has been executed in 3 major phases. The launch of the construction phase followed the successful completion of the first phase of the project, which focused on the construction of the ground station. The third phase comprising of the launch service and operationalization of the satellite for nominal life in orbit. Some years ago, Professor Ouattara presented the project to the government and secured the government's commitment to fund the project in January 2019. We are supported by researchers from our Energy and Meteorology Research Laboratory in the Larimi space. We have in our team Burkinabe from the diaspora with skills in engineering and in the field of space sciences, Professor Ouattara was quoted as saying. Commenting on the satellite project, Burkina Faso's minister in charge of scientific research, Professor Alkassoum Maiga, said, Burkina is proud of what has been done. If there is one project that needs to be moved forward, it is this one. It is of strategic interest, if only for our food security, to prevent disasters and certain diseases. We bet on the right horse. The first stage, which consisted of the construction of the ground station, was launched on 27 August 2020. Since then, Intense work on the project has continued with President Ibrahim Traore offering full support. Alongside a dedicated team of engineers and researchers, Dr. Ouattara has driven the project's development from inception to launch. The project has also benefited from international collaborations, drawing support and expertise from global space agencies and institutions. These partnerships have been instrumental in providing technical guidance, training, and resources, ensuring the project's success and sustainability. Before we continue, just a gentle reminder to like and share our videos. Also, subscribe if you haven't done so to stay informed on the latest African economic, political, and social developments, and explore how global geopolitics impact the continent. The applications of Burkina Sat-1 are vast and impactful. In agriculture, the satellites data will help farmers optimize crop yields, detect pests early, and manage soil health more effectively. With precise data on weather patterns and soil conditions, farmers can make informed decisions, leading to increased productivity and reduced crop losses. Imagine a future where farmers can predict rainfall and plan their planting seasons accordingly. For water resource management, Burkina Sat-1 will monitor reservoirs and water bodies, aiding in the efficient distribution and conservation of this precious resource. Burkina Sat-1 will help map and monitor water resources, ensuring efficient use and distribution. Access to clean water is a fundamental need, and this satellite will play a crucial role in addressing water scarcity. In the area of healthcare, data on environmental conditions, Burkina Sat-1 can help predict and manage health risks, such as disease outbreaks. Access to accurate information can save lives and improve public health outcomes. On the economic front, the satellite's data will support infrastructure development, disaster management, and urban planning. By fostering a more resilient and informed society, Burkina Sat-1 will drive economic growth and create new opportunities. You see, Burkina Sat-1 is more than just a technological achievement, it's a source of inspiration for young Burkinabe scientists and engineers. It showcases the potential of homegrown talent and encourages the pursuit of critical education. The satellite could help Ibrahim Traore's government in the surveillance of the national territory against terrorist incursions. The satellite's capabilities extend to climate resilience, providing data to predict and mitigate the effects of natural disasters such as droughts and floods. Beyond these immediate applications, the project addresses basic needs like clean drinking water and improved healthcare by informing infrastructure planning and disease monitoring. Economically, Burkina Sat-1 is expected to drive growth by fostering a knowledge-based economy, attracting investment in tech industries, and creating high-skilled jobs. Technologically, it marks a significant step forward, positioning Burkina Faso as a player in the global space industry. Every ambitious project faces its share of challenges, and Burkina Sat-1 is no exception. The challenges range from technical hurdles to funding constraints. The journey has been far from easy. The Burkina Sat-1 project faced numerous challenges, from securing funding to developing the necessary technical expertise. However, through perseverance and strategic partnerships, the team overcame these obstacles. International collaboration provided critical technical training and resources, while local initiatives focused on building capacity and infrastructure. The dedication and resilience of the project team were pivotal in navigating these challenges and ensuring the project's success. Burkina Sat-1 is a beacon of progress within the African space sector. It exemplifies how emerging space programs can contribute to addressing local and regional challenges through technology. The project sets a precedent for collaboration among African nations, fostering a spirit of shared innovation and development. Potential partnerships with other African countries could lead to a more integrated and robust space industry across the continent. Looking ahead, Burkina Faso's space program holds promising potential. Future developments may include launching more advanced satellites, expanding ground infrastructure, and further integrating satellite data into national development plans. The success of Burkina Sat-1 is likely to inspire a new generation of scientists and engineers, fueling interest in STEM fields and driving the country's technological ambitions forward. The Burkina Sat-1 project is a testament to Burkina Faso's determination to harness technology for sustainable development. By addressing critical issues and fostering economic growth, it holds the promise of a brighter future for the nation. As President Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso reaches for the stars, it not only elevates its scientific capabilities, but also inspires a sense of pride and possibility among its people. The journey of Burkina Sat-1 is a powerful reminder that even in the face of challenges, innovation and collaboration can propel a nation towards extraordinary achievements. Burkina Sat-1 is more than just a satellite. It's a symbol of hope, progress, and the unyielding spirit of Burkina Faso. As the nation reaches for the stars, it inspires us all to believe in the power of dreams and the potential of innovation. What excites you the most about the Burkina Sat-1 project? How do you think it will impact the lives of people in Burkina Faso? And how importantly could it be in helping President Ibrahim Traoré defeat the insurgents attacking Burkina Faso?
The military have intensified their fight against terrorist elements, both on the ground and in the air. But who are these terrorists in the Sahel? When the terrorists returned to Tombouctou in Mali in the evening, terrorists showed up at his house and wanted to rape his wife in front of him. He opposed them. They left, but the next day they came back to fish him out of his house, brought him to the public square and accused him of theft. His hand was cut off, he was beaten and told to go home. Later they came back, raped his wife and took away his son. They continued to rape his wife for days until she committed suicide. A coordinated airland operation has helped disrupt terrorist activities and thwarted their attempts to regroup or launch attacks. Precision airstrikes and ground maneuvers have targeted the positions of terrorists with remarkable effectiveness, leading to the neutralization of many hostile elements. Despite the significant progress made, the Malian army has encountered challenges, particularly in rough and isolated areas where terrorist groups have sought refuge. Ambushes by armed terrorist groups have tested the resilience and tactical prowess of the Malian forces. However, thanks to swift and decisive action, these ambushes have been successfully countered, demonstrating the determination and combat readiness of the Malian army. At the end of last year, terrorists in Kidal, northern Mali, cut telephone lines. After several days of airstrikes, the terrorists fled as the Malian army took control of the city, winning a major victory. Operation Kidal was of immense strategic importance in the broader context of Mali's fight against terrorism. By regaining control of the city and its outskirts, the Malian government intends to assert its sovereignty and authority over the entire national territory. Furthermore, the operation sends a powerful message to terrorist groups that their reign of terror will not be tolerated and that their hold over the region is gradually weakening. The armed forces of Mali have been actively engaged in driving terrorist groups out of the country, with the last pockets of resistance falling one after the other in a remarkable display of intelligence gathering and rapid action. The interception by the Malian army of a terrorist meeting near the intersection of the borders between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger shows the effectiveness of a proactive counter-terrorism effort, highlighting the crucial role played by advanced surveillance technology and decisive airstrikes. The operation began when the Malian Army's intelligence unit intercepted a communication indicating a gathering of terrorists in a remote area near the border junction. Aware of the urgency of the situation, the army quickly mobilized resources to monitor and assess the unfolding scenario. A key element of the army's response was the deployment of a surveillance drone to the target area. This aerial asset provided real-time surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities, allowing the army to track the movements of suspected terrorist elements with precision and accuracy. While the surveillance drone surveyed the area, it detected a lone vehicle moving quickly and erratically, exhibiting behaviors indicative of suspicious activity. The Air Force meticulously monitored the vehicle's trajectory, noting its stops, U-turns, and interactions with neighboring structures. The climax of the operation occurred when the vehicle stopped in front of a small house suspected of serving as a command post for the terrorist groups. Shortly after, several armed individuals arrived on the scene, reinforcing suspicions as to the nature of the gathering. Thanks to the intelligence gathered, and at the time deemed optimal, the Air Force launched a precise airstrike targeting the terrorist meeting. Taking advantage of the element of surprise and exploiting a moment of vulnerability, the Air Force dealt a devastating blow to the terrorist groups, neutralizing their presence and disrupting their plans. The interception and interruption of the terrorist meeting near the border between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger underlined the proactive approach of the Malian army in the fight against terrorism and its ability to leverage advanced surveillance technologies to gain a strategic advantage. In the central region of the country, a detachment of the Malian army encountered armed terrorist groups as they crossed the road between Kouala and Mordia. The ensuing confrontation turned into a fierce battle as Malian army units quickly responded with a counterattack. Despite complex ambushes orchestrated by the terrorists, the Malian army demonstrated exceptional courage and determination. The encounter resulted in significant losses for the terrorist groups. Decisive action and strategic maneuvers by the Malian army enabled it to effectively neutralize the terrorists. Multiple engagements along the route resulted in heavy losses for the terrorists, with many fighters neutralized and their communication equipment abandoned. The ferocity of the ambushes and the battle that followed underlined the combativeness and the unwavering commitment of the Malian army in the defense of the nation. Despite a formidable adversary, the Malian army demonstrated remarkable resilience and tactical acumen, thwarting terrorist advances and inflicting substantial losses on the enemy. Meanwhile, across the border in Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré launched a surprise offensive against armed terrorist groups. This operation follows repeated calls from Traoré for insurgents to lay down their arms. The operation was prepared discreetly to catch the terrorists off guard in their occupied region near the Mali border. The primary objective is to reclaim a major town and several villages in this area. The mission includes 5 rapid intervention battalions and a mixed battalion of soldiers and volunteers for the defense of the homeland. With the Air Force's support, over 8,000 fighters have been mobilized, equipped with effective firepower and newly acquired heavy artillery. Multiple rocket launchers targeted terrorist bases 30 to 40 kilometers away as troops advanced towards the town of Gassan, where residents had fled due to terrorist attacks. The troops quickly took control of the town establishing strategic positions and defense lines stretching over 5 kilometers. In a significant victory against terrorism, the Malian armed forces neutralized one of the most notorious terrorist leaders, Hugo, near the border with Burkina Faso and Niger. The decisive moment came when a major battle broke out less than 100 kilometers to the border with Burkina Faso. Despite resistance, Malian forces remained firm, neutralizing several terrorists, including their foremost leader, Hugo. The events that led to the takedown of the terrorist leader started when Colonel Madu and his dedicated team of Operation Nangi successfully traversed the notoriously perilous Valley of the Shadow of Death in the Nara region. Their mission, a critical part of the broader effort to eradicate terrorism, has seen them engage and dismantle terrorist factions that once believed themselves invincible in this treacherous terrain. Over the course of their mission, Operation Nangi has confronted terrorists on 5 separate occasions, each time demonstrating superior strategy and firepower. The commitment and professionalism of Colonel Madu's forces have not only disrupted these hostile elements, but also showcased the exemplary involvement of women in combat roles, highlighting their significant contribution to the mission's success. The terrorism epidemic, which had deeply entrenched itself in Nara, is being systematically dismantled. The Malian armed forces' efforts are likened to curing a cancer that has long plagued the region. With each successful engagement, they move closer to restoring peace and stability, transforming the once dreaded terrorists into mere shadows, fading into obscurity. In the Koila locality, a critical point on the road to Nara, armed terrorist groups launched an attack a few months ago. In response, the men of Operation Nangi embarked on a series of highly dangerous missions to secure this and other key areas. Their operations extend across a challenging landscape, where extreme temperatures, soaring to 48 degrees in the shade test, their endurance as much as the enemy does. Equipped with over 20 kilos of gear, these defenders of freedom meticulously comb through the territory. They face sudden enemy ambushes, but their readiness and swift counterattacks leave no room for terrorist advantage. The engagements between Koila and Morja, passing through Galo, saw terrorists attempting desperate tactics, including fire screens to destabilize the forces. Just in time, the country's long-awaited military equipment arrived. The head of state and the military leader conducted an inspection to ensure the drones and attack helicopters are ready for immediate deployment to the battlefront. This arrival comes at a crucial time, significantly enhancing the operational capabilities of the Malian armed forces in their ongoing fight against terrorism and insurgency. The drones and helicopters are expected to provide critical support to ground troops, offering advanced surveillance, reconnaissance, and formidable attack capabilities. With this new equipment, the operation to take down one of the region's most feared terrorist leaders gained substantial momentum. Hugo, known as one of the top terrorist leaders operating in the tri-border area, played a key role in orchestrating numerous attacks, spreading chaos and fear among innocent civilians. His elimination is the result of meticulous planning and execution by the Malian armed forces, which relentlessly pursue terrorist groups operating in the region. The operation to neutralize Hugo was part of a broader strategy employed by the Malian armed forces, aimed at eradicating terrorist elements and ensuring peace and stability in the region. For this large-scale operation carried out with the greatest professionalism and precision, troops from several battalions were mobilized. Under the direction of Malian army generals, the troops began their mission in the Danguro area. equipped with a global strategy developed after careful analysis of operational logistics and meteorological information. The objective was clear: track down and neutralize armed terrorist groups while securing Malian territory and protecting the local population. The operation faced many challenges, including ambushes and intense combat situations. However, the determination and resilience of the Malian armed forces, supported by air forces, made it possible to relentlessly pursue and corner the terrorist groups. The decisive moment came when a major battle broke out at less than 100 kilometers to the border with Burkina Faso. Despite resistance, Malian forces remained firm, ultimately neutralizing several terrorists, including Hugo. This significant achievement not only eliminates a notorious threat, but also brings justice to the countless innocent lives affected by his actions. The success of this operation underlines the effectiveness of the Malian armed forces in the fight against terrorism and the restoration of peace in the region. Following the major victories by the Mali armed forces, the president of neighboring country Senegal, new elected Bassirou Faye, arrived in the Mali capital city Bamako in a show of support and solidarity with his Mali counterpart, head of state Assimi Goïta. Bilateral cooperation between Senegal and Mali shares a unique history that predates independence and continues through the Federation of Mali. I came here to continue strengthening these relations on diplomatic, commercial, and consultative levels. We aim to manage common challenges such as terrorism, the fight against illicit trafficking, ecological issues, and poverty. We share precious resources like water through the Senegal River, overseen by the OMVS, and face other mutual challenges, supporting our people's aspirations. Historically, geographically, and through our deep ties, Senegal maintains privileged relations with Mali. I am delighted with the warm welcome extended to me and my delegation in Mali. I am also pleased to meet my brother, Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Malian transition. We are committed to strengthening bilateral cooperation and enhancing consultation at regional, sub-regional, and international levels, particularly on matters of integration. Although this victory marks an important milestone, the fight against terrorism remains ongoing, with the Malian armed forces ready to face any future threats with unwavering determination. The fight against terrorism in Mali has been a long and arduous journey, fraught with pitfalls and complexities. Since the outbreak of conflict in the early 2010s, Mali has grappled with the scourge of terrorism, fueled by a combination of internal grievances, regional instability, and transnational jihadist networks. The roots of the conflict date back to the 2012 Tuareg rebellion, which was quickly exploited by various jihadist groups, including Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, AQIM, Ansar Dine, and later the Islamic State in the Great Sahara, ISGS. These groups have taken advantage of the instability to take control of large swaths of territory in northern Mali, imposing their brutal interpretation of Sharia law and committing widespread human rights violations. In response, the Malian government, with the support of regional and international partners, particularly Russia, launched military operations aimed at reconquering lost territories and combating the terrorist threat. Over the years, the fight against terrorism in Mali has evolved. reflecting changing dynamics on the ground and the adaptation of jihadist tactics. Malian armed forces, supported by regional partners such as Burkina Faso and Niger, have made significant progress in degrading terrorist networks and restoring government control in previously contested areas. The main stages of this ongoing conflict include the liberation of major cities like Tombouctou and Gao, Kidal, the dismantling of terrorist camps, and the disruption of smuggling routes used to finance jihadist activities. With continued political will, strategic coordination, and sustained regional cooperation, Mali is ready to emerge from the shadow of conflict and chart a path toward a more peaceful and prosperous future. If you like the videos that I produce on this channel, take a little time to like and have intensified efforts to maintain security and stability across the country. Driven by strong patriotism and cooperation from the civilian population, the Armed Forces (FDS) has executed multiple operations targeting terrorism, banditry, and related offenses. In the western part of the country, patrols were intensified in several areas, leading to the arrest of terrorists linked to numerous attacks on civilians. On the right bank of the river in the same region, Operation Nia aimed to secure the area, allowing riverside populations to continue their agricultural activities under the careful supervision of security forces. Combing operations in several localities resulted in the neutralization of several terrorists, further stabilizing the region and enabling residents to live without fear. In the southern region near the border with Nigeria, as part of Operation Amisa, the territorial brigade of a local town arrested individuals involved in international drug trafficking, seizing over 56,000 tablets of tramadol and Idico. The suspect and the contraband were handed over to the authorities. In the northern region near the border with Algeria, as part of Operation Garka, on July 30th, a mixed FDS patrol intercepted 2 suspicious vehicles and arrested 3 individuals after a pursuit. 3 Toyota V6 vehicles from a neighboring country were spotted in an attack formation, but retreated towards the border under FDS gunfire. In the southeastern region near the border with Chad, despite recent calm, an alert about a Boko Haram kidnapping near a village prompted an immediate pursuit to the shore of Lake Chad. Although the kidnapping was not confirmed, an enemy canoe and other Boko Haram belongings were destroyed. Thanks to local cooperation, 2 improvised explosive devices in nearby localities were detected and neutralized, preventing potential harm. The FDS credits these successes to the invaluable cooperation of the civilian population, whose patriotism has been instrumental in the fight against insecurity. The Defense and Security Forces express profound gratitude to the people for their continued support and collaboration, underscoring the importance of heightened vigilance to ensure ongoing peace and security. These operations highlight the effective measures taken by Niger's Defense and Security Forces to maintain territorial integrity and protect its citizens. The active involvement of local populations and the firm posture of the FDS are pivotal in combating terrorism, banditry, and other threats, fostering a secure and stable environment in Niger. Over the past week, the fight against terrorism has made notable strides. A series of operations culminated in the arrest of 43 individuals affiliated with terrorist armed groups. These arrests signify a crucial breakthrough, substantially diminishing the operational capacity of these dangerous entities. By removing key members from the ranks of these groups, authorities have delivered a powerful blow to their ability to plan and execute attacks. Simultaneously, Officers for the Suppression of Illicit Trafficking of Narcotics has executed extensive operations targeting the drug trade. These efforts led to the confiscation of approximately 227 kilograms of various drugs and nearly 20,000 tablets of different kinds over the last week. In connection with these seizures, 149 individuals of various nationalities were apprehended, underscoring the global reach of the drug trafficking networks. The scale of these operations highlights the commitment and efficiency of the authorities in tackling the drug trade, which often funds and fuels other forms of organized crime, including terrorism. By disrupting these networks, the Central Office for the Suppression of Illicit Trafficking of Narcotics has significantly hindered the financial streams that support terrorist activities. The success of these operations shows the constant vigilance and strategic measures implemented by the security services. These efforts are not only reactive, but also proactive, aiming to prevent further crimes and dismantle criminal networks before they can cause harm.
Despite its ice and cold climate, the Arctic is gradually turning into the hottest point of the geopolitical confrontation between the West and Russia. Due to its geographical location and the presence of huge reserves of fossil resources, the Arctic has become an object of increased interest to all world powers. Everyone understands perfectly well that from a geopolitical point of view, the Arctic is the most important region in the world, which can give its owner inexhaustible wealth and enormous influence. At the moment, a real battle for the Arctic is unfolding before our eyes. Against this backdrop, realizing its vulnerability, Washington is taking more and more aggressive steps against Russia. At the same time, the world's media cover the growing tensions around the Arctic rather sparsely, as their main focus is on events in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. However, many world experts are confident that it is the Arctic that will become the new battleground of the world powers. Many experts are sure that it is the conflict of interests in the Arctic that could trigger the outbreak of World War III. At the moment, the West is concerned about Russia's growing influence in the Arctic. Washington does not like that Russia, due to its geographical location, has actually taken control of the Northern Sea route. American politicians say that Moscow's control over the Northern Sea route can turn Russia into a major center of international trade. Washington cannot allow this to happen, as it will cause irreparable damage to the dominance of Western countries led by globalists, who at all times sought to take control of all trade routes. Against this backdrop, the United States has already attacked Russia using all available means. First, the United States has strengthened its military presence in the Arctic region. This was made possible by the accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO. Now, the United States uses the territory of these countries to store weapons and maintain a contingent. Secondly, the United States unilaterally declared extending of claims to the Arctic continental shelf. Washington unilaterally annexed to the United States about 1 million square kilometers of territory that runs along the bottom of the Bering Sea and the Arctic itself. Thus, the United States went to another escalation of the situation, since not only Russia, but also Denmark and Canada claimed these territories. Thirdly, the United States began to develop the so-called ecological map, convincing the countries of the world that Russia's presence in the Arctic threatens the nature of this region. In response, Russia announced the beginning of strengthening its icebreaking fleet, which is already the most powerful in the world. In addition, the Russian Northern Fleet was also put on alert, which indicates that Moscow is not going to give the Arctic to the globalists. However, the West, led by the United States, received the most crushing blow from Russian President Vladimir Putin. President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, signed amendments to the law on the internal sea waters of Russia. This new act is actually closing the Northern Sea route not only for the United States, but also for all other foreign states. Moreover, from now on, the entrance to the Northern Sea route will be prohibited not only for military ships, but also for civilian ones. My friends, in this video, I will explain to you in detail why Russia took this step and what it can lead to. According to the new law, the entrance to the Northern Sea route will take place only with the permission of Russia. Moreover, according to the new law, no more than one foreign warship or other foreign vessel moving along it can now be located on the Northern Sea route, which has a length of more than 5,500 kilometers. Moreover, now, in order to obtain permission from Russia to enter the Northern Sea route, a foreign state must submit its application 90 days in advance. At the same time, Moscow made it clear that it reserves the right to refuse any foreign state that applied for passage through the Northern Sea route, without explaining the reason for its refusal. At the same time, Russia also reserved the right to cancel the already issued permit for passage through the Northern Sea route. In addition, now all foreign ships wishing to approach the Russian Arctic zone will have to move exclusively under their own flag. And foreign submarines, including other underwater vehicles, will have to move exclusively on the sea surface. Thus, we are actually talking about the fact that Russia has imposed an embargo on a foreign military presence on the Northern Sea route. At the moment, Russia is conducting a large construction of civilian and military facilities there. That is why Moscow is strengthening control over shipping, including for the reduction of environmental risks. The United States was shocked by such a bold decision made by Moscow. Washington has already stated that the United States will not recognize Russia's restrictions on the Northern Sea route. Earlier, former U.S. Secretary of the Navy, Kenneth Braithwaite, said that according to the Blue Arctic Doctrine, adopted by the Pentagon, U.S. and Allied ships will soon begin regular patrols off Russian coasts and the polar latitudes, to prevent Russia from advancing in the far north. My friends, all this means that a future clash between the United States and Russia is simply inevitable. Well, what can be expected then? Looks like history is simply repeating itself. Immediately after Moscow announced harsh restrictions on the Northern Sea route, the Russian Ministry of Defense and the FSB developed a plan to counter possible provocations along the Northern Sea route. Russia is confident that American ships will try to violate the ban in various ways, or provoke an environmental disaster. In order to contain the United States, Russia decided to increase the number of reconnaissance and destruction assets. The frequency of patrols will also be increased. Moreover, if American ships attempt to enter the Russian zone, some practical action will be taken to stop them. What kind of actions these could be, can be judged by the incident in the Black Sea that occurred in 1988. Back then, the Americans also didn't recognize the sea border of the USSR near Crimea, and constantly violated it, in order to conduct reconnaissance of Soviet military facilities. The Soviet patrol ships Bezabotny and SKR-6 were forbidden to open fire on the Americans. However, they rammed American ships, although they were much inferior in size. As a result, the American missile cruiser USS Yorktown was seriously damaged, and together with the destroyer, was forced to leave the disputed waters. If any of you think that today, Russian sailors are not capable of such actions, then let me remind you that on February 12, 2022, after an American submarine entered the territorial waters of Russia near the Kuril Islands, and ignored the requirements to leave the zone, the Russian frigate Marshal Shaposhnikov used special means that forced the Americans to flee at full speed. And I have no doubt, not a sliver of a doubt, that there will be many more such incidents in the future. Thus, as you can see, the battle for the Arctic is gaining momentum. At the moment, the United States and Russia are actively preparing for real combat operations in the Arctic latitudes, which may begin in the next 30-35 years. I am absolutely sure that in the middle of this century, Americans and Russians will take very active actions for the seizure of territories in the Arctic and the development of these territories in the interests of their states. Dear friends, all this undoubtedly increases the risk of starting a new global war.
The North Korean army has new additions to its missile systems. The frontline units along the southern border have been provided 250 ballistic missile launchers. The North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un oversaw the delivery of these missile launchers in a ceremony in Pyongyang. Now, according to media reports, the launchers are up-to-date tactical attack weapons that are personally designed by Kim Jong-un himself and ready to be transferred to the Korean People's Army units. During the ceremony, Kim Jong-un called for a ceaseless expansion of his military's nuclear program and said these will also give his frontline units overwhelming firepower over South Korea. Tensions in the Korean peninsula are at an all-time high, with the North ramping up its weapons production and sending provocative trash balloons to the South. According to reports, South Korea responded by resuming its propaganda broadcasts along the border. It also suspended a military drill as well and restarted live-fire drills near the border. North Korea has been expanding its lineup of mobile short-range weapons designed to overwhelm the missile defenses in South Korea, while also pursuing intercontinental ballistic missiles designed to reach the U.S. mainland.
김정은 동지께서는 당과 정부, 군부의 지도 간부들, 대연합부대 지휘관들과 함께 다시금 신용무장거의 겁이 찼습니다.
West Asia, reports suggest that Iran has rejected calls by the United States and Arab nations to temper its response to the killing of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders. And this comes after Iran warned that Hezbollah will strike deeper targets inside Israel, even if it means an all-out war. In a bid to reduce tensions in the region, Jordanian foreign minister traveled to Iran on Sunday with a plea for an end to the escalation of violence. However, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said, and I'm quoting, the assassination of Hamas's chief Ismail Haniyeh was a major mistake by the quote-unquote Zionist regime that will not go unanswered. Hezbollah has posted a video for Israel which says, final warning, await the painful punishment. Since the killing of Hezbollah and Hamas leaders, it does look like the psychological war has escalated between the both warring parties. Israel is currently preparing for the possibility of an Iranian-led attack that would include missiles being fired at Israel over the course of multiple days. According to reports, Israel's security establishment is mulling the possibility of preventive actions or attacks and has clearly outlined that the state of Israel is in a multi-front war against Iran's axis of evil.
The state of Israel is in a multi-arena war against Iran's axis of evil. We are striking hard at any of its arms. We are prepared for any scenario, both on the defense and the offensive side. I tell our enemies again, we will react and exact a heavy price for any act of hostility towards us.
Meanwhile, the United States of America is continuing to help Israel against any kinds of Iranian retaliation after deploying fighter jets and aircraft carrier in the region. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby asserted that Washington has the capabilities in the region to help defend Israel.
Look, when the Supreme Leader says he's going to avenge, we have to take that seriously. Now, I don't know what they're going to do or when they're going to do it, but we got to make darn sure that we're ready and that we have the capabilities in the region to be able to help Israel defend itself and, quite frankly, defend our own people, our own facilities, our own national security interests.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe.
Israel assassinated Hamas political leader in Iran this week. Iran has vowed revenge. Wall Street seems not to care. It is banking on cooler heads to prevail. But is this complacency justified? Why might the US elections be changing the reaction functions of Iran and Israel? What could bite the market in the ass? Are we still living in a unipolar world, or are we already in a multipolar one? I don't know. What I do know is that the unipolar world and the multipolar world orders are locked in a high-stake power struggle right now. The unipolar world wants to maintain the dominance that it has enjoyed since the end of the Cold War, whereas the multipolar world wants a bigger seat at the table and a bigger share of the pie that it thinks it deserves. Which side will prevail in the end? The jury's still out, but the power struggle has already produced some obvious and less obvious winners and losers. An example of an obvious winner is Mexico, that is benefiting from reshoring and friendshoring of American manufacturing. Mexico has seen a surge of direct investment, and last year overtook China to become the largest exporter to the US. A less obvious winner of the power struggle between the unipolar and the multipolar world orders is Iran. Iran directly benefits from the increasing animosity between the two camps. This is helping to alter the balance of power in the Middle East, making a regional war more likely. Russia has long been the main arms supplier to Iran, and the two countries cooperated closely in Syria to preserve the Assad regime. But because Iran was under Western sanctions and Russia had business dealings with the West, Moscow kept Tehran at arm's length. But the Russia-Ukraine war has brought the two countries much closer. Western economic sanctions against Russia have deepened the economic ties between the two countries as Russia explores ways to circumvent the sanctions. The bilateral trade between the two countries increased by 48% in the first quarter of this year. The two countries just signed an agreement that will connect Iran's Shatab banking system and Russia's Mir interbank system by the end of this month. With respect to defense cooperation, the two countries have moved beyond their previous client-patron relationship, with Iran becoming a major supplier of arms to Russia since the Ukraine war. One recent report suggests that Russia has purchased at least 6,000 Shahed 136 drones since the war. There were also reports that Iran was sending hundreds of ballistic missiles to Russia. Recently, Iran is said to be supplying anti-drone defense systems to Russia. In exchange, Russia is said to have promised to provide Iran with advanced fighter jets and air defense technology, and is providing technical assistance to Iran's spy satellite development. In April, Iran unveiled a new drone that looks a lot like the powerful Russian Lancet drone, a precision loitering munition that in the Ukraine war has proved to be highly effective against high-value targets deep inside the enemy's lines. All this is helping to upgrade Iran's military capabilities and strengthen its defenses against any future airstrike by Israel on its nuclear infrastructure. There's little doubt that Iran is exploiting the power struggle between the unipolar and the multipolar world to move closer to realizing his ambition to join the world's nuclear club. Like Russia, China has long been an arms supplier to Iran. China was a principal supplier of nuclear technology to Iran until the 1990s and continues to provide assistance to its missile development program. The deterioration of the US-China relations under Biden has pushed China and Iran closer together. Although officially China has imported no Iranian oil since middle of 2022, most of the Iranian oil exports are ending up in China, according to data compiled by Klepper, a firm that specializes in tracking global shipping traffic. Much of the oil that China imports from Iran is passed off as oil of other origins, with tanker-to-tanker transfers in the open sea circumventing Western sanctions. In March 2021, Iran and China signed a cooperation agreement under which China agrees to invest $400 billion in Iran over the next 25 years. Iran joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in July 2023 and became a member of the BRICS in 2024. With the invitation to join the BRICS, Iran has emerged from international isolation and has shrugged off its outcast status in the West. Biden came into office in 2021 with a pledge to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal signed under Obama that Trump walked away from. Iran's growing ties with Russia and China might have prompted a change in US policy, but that didn't happen. In September 2023, Biden agreed to unfreeze $6 billion of Iranian funds to win the release of 5 Americans in Iranian detention. 2 months later, only weeks after the Hamas attack on Israel, Biden unfroze another $10 billion that Iraq owed Iran. Meanwhile, the Biden administration stopped enforcing the sanctions on Iranian oil exports. As a result, over the past 2 years, Iranian oil exports have increased by 10 times to reach 1.5 million barrels per day last month. Assuming Iran is selling its oil with a 25% discount, this means Iran has been able to generate an extra $50 billion in terms of oil revenue over the past 2 years as the result of US policy under Biden. It is possible that Biden wanted to woo Iran away from China and Russia. It is also possible that Biden needed Iranian oil to help keep oil price low. Whatever it was and is the reason, the clash between the unipolar and the multipolar world has been a huge windfall for Iran and its proxies in the Middle East. No country has played the unipolar world off against the multipolar world as successfully as has Iran over the past 3 years. As a result, its finances have improved, its military capabilities have improved, and its international status has improved. This is evidenced by the war that Iran has been waging against Israel since October. For the first time, Iran activated the Ring of Fire that it spent years building around Israel. Even with Hamas military capabilities greatly weakened, Iranian proxies in Lebanon, Yemen, Iraq, and Syria are mounting nearly constant attacks against Israel and are increasingly coordinating their attacks using a combination of missiles and drones. Israel's multi-layer air defense system with its Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow was designed with rockets and missiles in mind. It is struggling to defend against drones that fly at low altitude and with low heat signatures. Iranian drones damaged an Israeli radar surveillance balloon called Sky Dew in May, and a multi-million-dollar anti-drone system called Drone Dome in June. On July 19th, an Iranian drone launched from Yemen more than 1,000 miles away struck an apartment building in Tel Aviv, killing 1 person. Israel is now pouring millions of dollars into developing anti-drone defense systems, but Iran is not standing still either. Israel still has one of the best air forces in the world, but Iranian drones are gradually altering the balance in the sky. While Iran wages an undeclared war against Israel, it has quickened the pace of its uranium enrichment activities. Indeed, it is tempting to conclude that the war against Israel was always meant as a distraction to give Iran an opportunity to cross the nuclear Rubicon. It is thought that Iran is now only a month away from producing multiple nuclear weapons. Even Anthony Blinken, an Iran appeaser, admitted so much last week. The US elections may be giving Iran two reasons to make a run for nuclear immunity now. Tehran might think that it can do so with relative impunity. It might think that Washington may be even less willing to take any action that could cause oil price to spike in the run-up to the election. Tehran may also want to hedge against a potential second Trump term. In Trump's first term, he terminated the Iran nuclear deal and ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, Iran's most powerful military commander. The news last week that the US has intelligence that Iran is plotting to assassinate Trump could be viewed as evidence that Iran fears a return of Trump as America's commander-in-chief. From Iran's perspective, the time to go for nuclear immunity will not get any better than right now. Does this mean a nuclear Iran will be soon upon us? Not if Israel can do something about it. Iran featured prominently in Netanyahu's address to the US Congress last week. Indeed, I think it's reasonable to assume that Bibi went to the US to drum up support for taking action to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Is it a coincidence that 3 days after Bibi's return to Israel, the Hamas political leader Haniyeh was assassinated in Iran? Is it possible that this was meant to provoke Iran into retaliating against Israel in order to give Israel an excuse to take action against Iran's nuclear program? I don't know. What I think is safe to assume is that with Biden no longer seeking re-election, he may not have the same leverage over Israel and Iran. Biden may not even have the same incentive to keep oil price low at all costs. Biden has brought the world ever closer to the edge of World War III. Does he really want to be remembered for allowing Iran to cross the nuclear threshold and triggering a nuclear arms race across the Middle East? There's still 3 months before the US elections. In my view, both political and geopolitical risks will be going up between now and then.
Elections. He's also one of the leaders and founders of a new political party in America, the American Communist Party. We'll talk to him about both of those things. But first, I want to ask Jackson Hinkle if he knows that there's a war on in the Middle East and 4,000 American Marines are about to be caught up in the middle of it. What's up, Jackson? You're back from your travels, but the world is helter-skelter towards conflagration, perhaps a very big war indeed. I asked our friend Bryce Green earlier in the show if Americans even know that their sons and daughters are right in the middle of it. 4,000 Marines off the coast of Lebanon. What could possibly go wrong?
It's absolutely insane what's happening right now, but not surprising, I think, to any American that's been following the news over the past several years. I mean, you'd have to be living under a rock to believe that the American government is looking out for the best interests of the people of this country. Just like in the United Kingdom, I mean, our governments are completely cucked to the financial interests, to Wall Street, to the City of London, Bank of England, so on and so forth, and all of the warmongering cartel of political puppets that they utilize to fund these wars and to carry out these operations. Unfortunately for the West and unfortunately for their proxy in Israel, I really don't think that this is going to go as well as they do. And, you know, you and I were some of the first people, along with, you know, the notorious Scott Ritter and Colonel Douglas McGregor, who were saying, hey, look, if Israel does in fact try to invade Gaza rather than just bomb the smithereens out of it, their military is going to suffer high casualties. They're going to lose all those Merkava tanks. They're going to be up against a real challenge, and it's going to be more than just a bloody nose that they'll be dealt. And now with the prospects of going up against the Yellowmen in Lebanon and going up against Iran, I mean, it's going to be the end of the end for our proxy in the Middle East, and it's not going to go well at all. Unfortunately, many people are probably going to die in the process, and anything could happen. I mean, this could tip off World War III. We really don't know how deranged. Well, we do know how deranged the people are in the West leading this all. I mean, they're willing to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians to try and undercut the Russian economy, even though that's not working, and it hasn't worked for over 2 years now. And now they think they're going to have some political victory here. It's not going to happen.
It's good that you brought Zelensky up, because not only has he cancelled elections and therefore now ruling illegitimately with the full blessing of the United States, which will not accept the result of the presidential election in Venezuela. But not only has Zelensky cancelled the elections, he's just cancelled debt repayments. He's borrowed money from all and sundry, and he's just unilaterally announced that there'll be no debt repayments until October. And if you believe he'll start again paying in October, I've got a bridge in London. I could sell them. This Zelensky-Ukraine love affair has cost your country and mine best part of $1 trillion so far, Jackson.
Well, that's why, as you said, your show is about to reach, top 100 podcasts in America, and it's in the top in your country, and it gives me chills when you say that. But again, that is another thing that should not be surprising to either of us, given how much truth that you have spilled on this matter. I mean, you pointed out exactly right. Zelensky doesn't even have elections. He has no elections. There's no legitimacy to his reign on terror in Ukraine. The people wouldn't reelect him if there were elections today. I guarantee you that's why he's not having elections. That's why he's not signing a peace deal, because a peace deal would bring an end to this martial law that is the legal justification for there to be no elections. And all the while, they're pointing the finger at President Maduro and saying, these elections are not fair. They're illegitimate. Well, they've provided no proof. The Venezuelan elections, I saw them for myself. I was an international observer there. I got to visit countless polling stations and opposition areas and pro-Maduro areas. I was with opposition election observers. The elections were sound, fair, transparent, and free to everyone, okay? They were more transparent and safer than American elections, but we don't even need to address that. All we need to do is look at the hypocrisy about the West sending damn near $1 trillion to Zelensky with no elections, but then moaning and groaning about Maduro, who had the cleanest elections and won with about 6-7% of the vote.
Gayatri and I, we were present in 2012 for Comandante Hugo Chavez's final victory. Chavez won more elections and more referenda than any other political leader alive. Venezuela constantly has elections, has a constitution that they seem rather infatuated with. They are all the time trying to comply with liberal nostrums from countries that have no interest in those things unless they deliver a slave government to Washington. So I asked the other night, I'm asking you now, you were there, so were we in 2012. What's the point in trying to please these people? Why not become like Cuba, a place that cannot be overthrown, a place that cannot be invaded, subverted? When we were there in 2012, Jackson, there was hundreds of thousands of oppositionists marching down the streets. There was umpteen television stations spewing out hate against Chavez. Most of the newspapers were opposition newspapers, and still Chavez won. But nobody ever accepted it, is the point I'm making.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most incredible thing, right? This is the country, Venezuela, with the most oil in the entire world. On the continent, they have the most gas, they have the most gold, they have the most of all these precious mineral resources, aluminum, cobalt, so on and so forth. Okay, so obviously this is a prime target for the United States and all of, the, transnational finance capital interests, right? When you look at the situation, the democratic situation on the ground, the opposition has like 8 or 9 parties that ran in this election. Most of them didn't even like the main opposition because they have so many problems with them. The main opposition is very far right wing. They're unpopular. The U.S. just kind of propped them up because the newer wave of these opposition figures like Juan Guaido are stuck in Miami. And they're stealing Venezuelan state assets like Citgo, so they're not allowed to go back to Venezuela. But, this woman, Maria Corina Machado, whatever her name is, she has literally called for the United States to invade Venezuela in a BBC interview in 2019 to remove President Maduro. She also wrote a letter to Benjamin Netanyahu saying, Israel's struggle is Venezuela's struggle, also begging him to come and invade with the IDF and free Venezuela. In any other country, that would be deemed treason. But in Venezuela, they allow her to roam out on the streets. They allow her to have this party and run these candidates. I mean, I don't take the Venezuelan leadership to be fools. I really don't. But I do think that they've been far too, lenient to trying to play ball with the Western rules. I don't think that they should continue to do that. And I had many discussions with Venezuelan leaders, over the past week and a half that I was there. I was with the foreign minister. I was with Alex Saab. I was got to speak to the president, of course. And I think that they are now at a turning point where they understand that as well. And they no longer are going to be trying to appease the West. I think they see full and well what's happening. They see the new multipolar world developing. They see BRICS membership in their near future in October. President Maduro just got invited to Kazan. I will be there in Kazan. I hope to score another interview with him and talk about his acceptance, his country's acceptance into the BRICS alignment. And, I don't see any reason why they should continue to try and appease the West when the West has done everything they can. They've tried to assassinate Maduro. They've tried to invade Venezuela. They placed 930 sanctions on the country. They stole Citgo, which is like a major, state oil resource. They stole the petrochemical company that they had in Colombia. Thank God Petro Gustavo gave it back. But, I mean, they've done everything they could to try and tear this country apart, and they still stand strong. It's beautiful.
It is, truly. Now, Gayatri, get the flight schedules for Kazan. All roads must lead to Kazan. Jackson, finally, you are one of the leaders and one of the founders of a new
who addressed a joint session of Congress. Was Mossad there with him in the Capitol building?
Well, of course, he always is accompanied by his bodyguards and people from Mossad. That would be my guess in any case.
Is it unusual that a foreign intelligence service should be at the heart of the American government? Ray? Okay, a little bit of a problem with the internet, Ray. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. You were
Oh.
breaking up for a second.
Okay, maybe both of us were breaking up. I think we're back now. Is it unusual that a foreign intelligence service would be at the heart of the American government?
I know what your question is, Judge. I didn't hear the rest of it, but no, it's not unusual for the. But the Israelis are given carte blanche. They had free entry to the Pentagon right before the Iraq War. That's demonstrated and documented. They have privileges that many of us Americans do not enjoy, no matter how many clearances we have.
What I'm driving at is the Israelis know who was cheering for Netanyahu and who wasn't, so they know if they were getting their money's worth.
Oh, how cruel, Judge. Of course, of course, they had other people there to film them, and that's why everyone got up, 58 times and cheered widely. It was just a terrible.
I'm wondering if we should start this over, Ray. Oh, there you are.
Review.
Okay, you're back. Hopefully, we'll be able to continue. As we speak, Sergei Shoigu, the former defense minister of Russia, now the secretary of the Security Council, which is a position not unlike Jacob Sullivan has in the United States, is in Tehran. What do you think he's doing there?
Well, he's preceded by a whole, a very large number of IL, IL 76s and IL 96s. I wanted to get the numbers right. As they flew from Russia to Tehran. I don't know, but one can depend on the fact that it was military aid, and it could be very sophisticated things like countermeasures, electronic measures against whatever the Israelis are going to throw up against the imminent, and I say imminent, Iranian attack against Israel.
What are these ILs with the numbers after them? What are they? Well, I think we're going to have to start. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I don't know
what are these ILs with the numbers after them?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, these are huge transports. They're capable of transporting all kinds of material and all kinds of other equipment, and of course people. But many flights have come from Russia down to Tehran over the last several days. That's just an hour old. I have the TASS in Russian here. It says he's conducting negotiations with his opposite numbers and will be seeing the president of Iran. That's big. The Russians are associating themselves with whatever Iran is going to do. And, it's a sort of a checkmate attempt. It's not going to checkmate what Iran's going to do. What the Russians are hoping is that the Israelis, perhaps warned by the U.S., look, we don't want a major war here, the Israelis will not do what they intend to do in reaction to the oncoming Iranian attack. Now, that's not likely that the U.S. is going to restrain Israel. So we have the makings of a major war. And the new element, of course, is Russia is identified with one of the combatants. And as I started to say before, the Chinese are really ticked off that all this happened right after they had made major effort, a successful effort, as far as I can tell, to blend the Palestinian factions together, to get them working together, which would be a first, but not a first for Chinese diplomacy in that part of the Middle East.
If Iran attacks Israel and this becomes a full-blown war and the United States comes to the assistance of Israel, will Russia come to the assistance of Iran? Next question, will China come to the assistance of Russia?
The answer to that, in my view, the answer to both those questions is yes, but not in an overt combatant way. They'll supply all the diplomatic, all the technical expertise that they can supply. Neither Russia nor China wants to get into a fighting war with the US. And the main reason where they can stand aside, so to speak, is because the Iranians are quite capable of doing what they want to do all by themselves, as back in April, they're going to use this time. And what Shoigu is doing there, of course, you know, he was the previous defense minister, and now he's secretary of the National Security Council of Russia. So he's no small guy. What he's trying to say is, look, we got your back, but there are limits to what we can do. Please clue us in on what you are going to do, and we'll see how much we can help you. That's how I read it. The Chinese, they've been very, well, you can tell that they're ticked off at what Netanyahu has done after the Chinese almost got those factions together, but they haven't pronounced yet, and I don't see any Chinese high officials coming to Tehran this week.
How reckless and how lacking in credibility and how self-destructive was the Israeli assassination of the Hezbollah leader in Beirut, blaming it and expecting the public to believe that somehow the Hezbollah killed non-Israelis and non-Jews playing soccer in Syria, and that somehow the Israelis are going to come to the defense of the non-Israelis, non-Jews playing soccer in Syria and attack Hezbollah. Who would believe that?
Americans. Judge, you know, as many people as watch our a small percentage Americans are dead. And so who would believe that? Americans would believe that, and that's the problem. What else can be said? Well, what Netanyahu has done now is really thrown down the gauntlet. And it looks like with all the protestations from the White House, and please don't get out of hand here, they're doing nothing. They're sending warships. They're sending an aircraft carrier back into the area with its accompanying ships. They're trying land-based missiles to defend. They're not going to defend this time because they used up most of their missiles last time in April. And another thing is, Iranians didn't shoot really all the hypersonic missiles that they have. There's going to be a major retaliation. What surprises me, in a sense, is that the Russians have decided to identify themselves overtly, in a very overt way, with what the Iranians are going to do. I don't think the Russians are going to temper what the Iranians are going to do, but they're going to give them advice, they're going to give them equipment, and they're going to stand behind them politically when it reaches the UN, as it inevitably will.
Alistair Crook believes that accompanying Minister Shoigu is some sort of high-tech electronic equipment that will neutralize the efforts of the Israeli Iron Dome to locate where the incoming missiles are. So it's not offensive weaponry. It's high-tech electronic equipment to neutralize the Israeli defenses. Does that make sense? And the Russians have this, and it's portable. Does that make sense?
And that explain all the IL-76s as well. These, as I say, are very big transport aircraft. They can carry lots of stuff, and I don't know how many flights there have been there, but there have been many.
Here's Hassan Nasrallah, who's the Hezbollah leader, saying that the enemy must wait for our inevitable reaction. Cut number 3.
The enemy and those behind the enemy must wait for our inevitable reaction. God willing, there is no discussion or controversy about this.
Is there any question but that there will be a reaction and that it will be massive?
No. Now, this one is easy. Both Nasrallah, and the Iranians, Hamas, have made it clear that this was the final straw. Now, how far they'll go is another question, but they have the capability of wreaking havoc in Israel against Israeli airfields. And not only Iran, but Hezbollah has many, many missiles that they can put into play. So, with the situation just getting completely out of hand, and the U.S. sending its warships into the area, you have the makings of a very volatile situation, as some people are predicting World War III. I agree with Alistair, what he says. He's been right on the mark all this while, and I think what we're expecting here is something really, really out of hand. And I think maybe the Russians and the Chinese not only are supporting Iran, but are also counseling a little bit of caution, because neither the U.S., neither Russia nor China want to get involved in a big war with the U.S., but they're happy to support Nasrallah, Hamas, and Iran in doing what they intend to do in retaliation for these indignities that have happened over the last week.
Let me get your take on the murder of Hanaya in Tehran. The New York Times reports, relying on unnamed sources, probably Mossad, that Mossad planted a bomb in his room 2 months ago and knew when he was there and detonated it. Alistair Crook reports from a friend of his who was in the building that there was no bomb. It was rather a projectile from outside the building that hit it at 3:15 in the morning after the man went to bed at 1:30 in the morning, which is more. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Alistair, as usual, is quite correct, and this time he has a source I didn't know he had. That's what the Iranians are saying. They waited a couple of days to investigate, and the New York Times is pretty disingenuous. What's the Times trying to do? They're trying to stir up problems within Iran by suggesting that some of the Iranian security agents were involved in perpetrating this bomb. It's bollocks, as the British say. It's BS. The investigation now is completed by the Iranians. I believe them, and the New York Times story is falling apart. And of course, their aim was to create consternation within the security forces of Iran. That's not going to do it. The Iranians have figured out they figured out where the missile came from, and I'm glad to hear that Al-Star has a first-hand source on that one.
This person, he says, is a friend of his who was staying in the building on the 4th floor. Hanaya was killed on the 2nd floor. How coordinated is the resistance? By which I mean, if this becomes a full-blown war, will other regional actors that have military power get involved against Israel?
Yes. The Houthis are the best example. Now, they can be considered part of the resistance, if you will, but the Houthis can raise hell in that part of the location. They're at a choke point there. They can cause hell. They can actually, if the USS Abraham Lincoln goes anywhere near Yemen, better watch out, because they have missiles that can sink aircraft carriers, that can actually destroy their deck, if not sink them, and that aircraft carrier would just be a sitting duck for the next missile. So yeah, the Houthis are the first that come to mind. You have enough with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. There are people in Syria and in Iraq who hate the Americans, in Syria for coming unwell.
There's the president of Syria with President Putin. Do we have you back yet, Ray? No, we still don't. Well, obviously, Vladimir Putin is not going to allow any serious damage to happen to Syria
Anything right now. I
There we
don't know. Oh, okay, you're back. Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Well, I hadn't heard anything more from you, but I just finished saying that the Houthis are example number one, but the resistance forces in Iraq and Syria have their own axis to grind, and they will be quite willing to wreak havoc on what remains of the American presence in both those countries.
How about Turkey and Egypt? Are they likely to do anything militarily with their troublesome neighbor?
Judge, Turkey is talking a big game. It may be that somebody's going to call them on it and say, all right, what are you going to do? If this gets out of hand, and it's likely to, I would expect the Turks would have to do more than just talk. With respect to Egypt, my God, they are in such debt, and so they're under such U.S. influence that Sisi is sort of not able to do anything other than to tell Tony Blinken, as he did 300 days ago, if you think you can drive the rest of the Palestinians into Egypt, forget about it. That's exactly what Blinken was trying to sell to al-Sisi. At least al-Sisi is standing up to that measure. Whether he'll do any more, doubtful.
Chris, do we have President Erdogan's recent statement about it may be necessary for us to enter Israel?
In the defense industry, where have we come to? But my dear brothers and sisters, let none of these fool us or should deceive us. We must be very strong so that this Israel cannot do these ridiculous things to Palestine. Just as we entered Karabakh, just as we entered Libya, we will do the same to them. There is no reason for us not to. We only have to be strong so that we can take these steps.
Is that credible?
It wasn't credible before the events that are about to happen in the next couple of days. It may become credible. Now, the two examples that he had used, Karabakh and Libya, they didn't really enter the fray there with Turkish troops. They threatened, they did send some to Libya, but it's not a matter of entering Israel unless things get out of hand. And I've been saying that all along. If the Israelis go after Hezbollah in a really big way, as they're likely to do right now, even if it's so-called retaliation for what they're about to suffer, Turkey might have to put its arms behind its mouth, and he may be forced to enter the fray, particularly since it's a little embarrassing to find the Houthis doing all the heavy lifting here. And Turkey, with the most powerful army in the area, standing back and just making empty threats.
One of our viewers writes in, Turkey should change its name to Chicken.
According to several unconfirmed Romanian media reports,
a NATO fuel depot containing diesel fuel, was set on fire by unknown assailants. Footage widely circulated online on August 4, 2024, showing a column of black smoke visible for several kilometers from a massive fire that broke out at the depot in Bragadiru near Bucharest, the country's capital. Sources reported that the depot was used to store fuel for onward supply to the armed forces of Ukraine via a pipeline, which likely crosses the border of Ukraine. The network blamed the fuel depot on Ukrainian saboteurs, anti-Zelensky, from the pro-Russian resistance movement. Local authorities have reported that a private house burned down, containing only a large amount of diesel, presumably for diesel generators. There was even an article written about this ordinary fire on a local news site, but no photos were provided. Romania is a NATO member, and a similar incident happened in Bulgaria about a week ago, where an arms depot also caught fire in a series of ongoing arson attacks across Europe. This is what New York looks like today, burning under artillery and aviation attacks of the Russian armed forces. Russian military correspondents released footage on August 3, 2024, showing the current situation of the armed forces of Ukraine in New York, another small town in Donetsk region that post-Soviet Ukrainians dream of, now on the path of battle. But somehow now called New York, this one dubbed in Ukrainian has become a beacon of U.S. culture. Regardless, soldiers of the 9th Brigade of the 1st AK continue to destroy enemy personnel and equipment, moving step by step through the enemy's defenses.
This is why Ukraine is striking out in Africa, because they get humiliated in Ukraine every day.
Many active fronts in front of Teretska. New York seems to be the area in the most difficult situation for Ukrainian troops. Kamikaze drone operators identify and attack Ukrainian tanks, armored personnel carriers, and all other equipment trying to move in this direction. As of day 889, Russian troops continue to make new advances in the eastern part of the town and recapture several positions on Zalin. With this advance, there are only 3.4 kilometers left to join the New York axis. Russian troops will enter from many points, northeast, east and southeast, and after the clearing of New York, will enter from the south in Teretska. The Russian Buk M3 air defense system leaves no chance for the enemy's ATACMS missiles supplied by the U.S., in the Special Military Operations Zone. The Russian Defense Ministry published footage on August 3, 2024, showing the operation of Buk M3 medium-range surface-to-air missile system by the crew of the Zapad Group of Forces of the 20th Guards Combined Arms Army, destroying one ATACMS tactical missile launched by the Armed Forces of Ukraine. ATACMS, the pride of NATO, is considered the most advanced missile and cannot be intercepted when launched. But America began to worry after Russian powerful attack on 3 Patriots in one day in Ukraine a few days ago. In addition, the air defense system successfully shot down the ATACMS operational tactical missile, 14 HIMARS rockets, and 61 drones. During the operation, the Defense Ministry emphasized that the crew of the complex detected high-speed and high-altitude targets launched by the enemy and destroyed them in a matter of seconds. As the department noted, the crew was on combat duty in all weather conditions around the clock and scanned the space every minute using a target detection station. Buk M3 not only shot down ATACMS, but they also effectively hit a large number of reconnaissance and attack drones, Tochka-U missiles, HIMARS MLRS, and other rocket systems in several launches. Then, the deployment of the combat crew to a new position took several minutes. Keep in mind, on the night of August 2nd, there was a wild missile attack on General Austriakov Avenue in Sevastopol, Crimea, coinciding with the flight of the former Dutch F-16BM from the new NATO joint airbase in Romania. The attack was carried out with 4 ATACMS missiles, but all of them burned up in the air after interception. The authorities in Crimea published pictures of the wreckage of ATACMS missiles and submunitions, which were shot down. The plan for the partial destruction of the warheads of MGM-140B ATACMS Block 1A ballistic missiles with cluster warheads, together with M74 submunitions, was completed by Russian engineers without any complications. It happened in compliance with all safety measures. Governor Mikhail Razbozhayev published photos of the wreckage of ATACMS in the city, which were thwarted and thwarted.
Air traffic trackers have recorded an increase in Russian planes journeying to Tehran more frequently since tensions between the Islamic Republic and Israel escalated. The tracker suggests that Russia may be shipping advanced missiles or military parts to its allies for use in the anticipated showdown. Reportedly, Iran has deployed the Murmansk BN, Russia's most powerful jamming communications system, at strategically important locations. Even the head of Russia's Security Council, Shoigu, is currently in Tehran to see things for himself. This move comes amid heightened tensions between Iran and Israel, following Israel's killing of Palestinian leader Ismail Haniyeh by projectiles fired at his hotel in the center of Tehran. The deployment underscores the growing military cooperation between Tehran and Moscow and raises critical questions about the implications for regional security and international relations. The Murmansk BN is a state-of-the-art electronic warfare system designed to disrupt and jam high-frequency HF communications over vast distances. With a reported operational range of up to 5,000 kilometers, the Murmansk BN can interfere with military and civilian communications across entire regions, making it one of the most formidable tools in modern electronic warfare. The timing of its deployment suggests a strategic response to the recent Israeli attack. By deploying the Murmansk BN, Iran significantly enhances its ability to project power and influence across the Middle East. This capability could be particularly relevant in key conflict zones, such as Syria, Iraq, and the Persian Gulf, where communication and coordination are crucial for military operations. The jamming capabilities of the Murmansk BN could pose a substantial threat to the communications infrastructure of Iran's adversaries, including the United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. Disrupting the communications of these nations' military forces could hinder their operational effectiveness, giving Iran a strategic edge, especially in the wake of the recent assassination. The deployment of such an advanced system serves as a deterrent against potential attacks. Adversaries may think twice before engaging in direct military action against Iran, knowing that their communications could be severely compromised. While the primary purpose of the Murmansk BN is military, its deployment could inadvertently affect civilian communications, including maritime and aviation operations in the region. This raises concerns about potential disruptions to international commerce and travel. Iran has claimed it is ready to cross international norms on retaliation, stating this time it wouldn't be business as usual. It has also mentioned that Hezbollah would target military and civilian targets in the heart of Israel to avenge the alleged death of a top military commander in a Beirut bombing raid. Iran has reportedly said it does not care if its retaliation for the killing of Haniyeh results in an all-out war against Israel. Statements like this suggest that attempts by allies and friends to dissuade Iran have fallen on deaf ears. Iran appears poised to end the constant embarrassment it has faced from Israel. But how is Russia taking sides? What is its motivation for the latest move? Last week, the Russian Gelix Airlines, which specializes in arms transport, landed in Tehran twice, allegedly with parts of missiles, aircraft maintenance gadgets, and other advanced military tools to bolster Iran's ability to deal with the threat posed by Israel's belligerence in the Middle East. The recent landing of the Gelix Airlines flight has sparked considerable intrigue and speculation. Known for its specialization in arms transport, Gelix Airlines activities often carry significant geopolitical weight. This event is no exception, potentially signaling shifts in regional dynamics and raising questions about the nature of the cargo and its intended use. Iran has been under international scrutiny for its missile development programs and its support for allied groups in the region, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and various militias in Syria and Iraq. Israel, in particular, views Iran's military enhancements with grave concern, considering Tehran's adversarial stance towards the Israeli state. Any significant arms transfer to Iran by Russia could prompt Israel to reconsider its security and military strategies, potentially leading to preemptive measures to counter perceived threats. While the exact contents of the Gelix Airlines cargo remain speculative, the nature of the airline's specialization suggests that Russia is delivering strategic military assets. This possibility fuels concerns over an escalation in military posturing and the potential for conflicts. Diplomatic channels are likely to be active as nations seek to understand the full scope and implications of this delivery from Russia. Engaging Iran in dialogue about its military intentions and seeking transparency could be critical steps towards maintaining regional stability. However, under the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel appears less interested in pursuing diplomatic resolutions with Iran. Instead, the country seems to be escalating tensions rapidly, potentially aiming to undermine Iran's military and socio-political progress. Russia's decision to enter this fray might be influenced by intelligence suggesting that Israel is assisting Ukraine with missile early warning systems installed on newly supplied F-16 fighter planes. This Israeli involvement in the Ukrainian crisis has sparked a silent diplomatic battle between Russia and Israel, with Russia vowing to defend Iran should it be attacked by the United States. This stance indicates that Russia is now prepared to supply Iran with advanced military hardware to deter Israeli and American intervention, especially following the much-publicized retaliation for the killing of Palestinian Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. President Vladimir Putin has thus far allowed Israel to conduct airstrikes against its Syrian ally. But this approach seems poised to change, as he appears to side more firmly with Iranian and Syrian allies. Recently, Putin met with the president of Syria, and while the content of their discussion was not disclosed, it likely pertained to addressing Israeli actions against Syrian forces. If these developments are accurate, the Middle East could be on the brink of a significant shift. Israel might soon face accountability for its belligerence and freedom of strikes on other sovereign nations. In the coming months, it may become increasingly difficult for Israel to conduct successful military raids on Syrian, Lebanese, or Iraqi targets. In Syria, particularly, Russia might equip the government with advanced early warning systems, drone detection mechanisms, and air defense systems, making it challenging for Israeli aircraft to operate without being engaged from all directions. This shift could herald a new era in the Middle East, characterized by Russia's increased military support for its Iranian allies. Former senior lecturer and researcher at Faculty of Sociology of the Moscow State University, Mark Sloboda has this to say about this development.
Obviously, I mean, the U.S. has cultivated the Mujahideen calque, and, both Israel and the U.S. have supported separatist groups within Iran in far-flung regions like, the Baluchi region in the north and the Azerbaijani. But obviously, they do not have the on-the-ground insurgent forces that could be used to overthrow the government in Iran, even during a long-range strike conflict. I don't believe they do. I mean, certainly they'll probably try it. They'll try to do what they can to disrupt Iran. But I certainly don't think it's anything that would be state existential. It could not result, as I understand it, in any type of regime change in Iran. These are mostly ethnic minorities and extremists, and they would not certainly have the support of the Iranian population.
Yeah, I talked with Colin Wilkerson. He said that there are studies in the United States about how to attack Iran, and all of those studies show it's not possible to attack Iran on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. Even they know there's unquestioned that it would be long-range strikes. What has made the U.S. particularly hesitate in this situation is, one, Iran is a lot stronger than it ever has been previously, right? Iran did not previously have the long-range strike capability to hit Israel in any substantial way, right? They didn't have the missiles. Supposedly, Iran even has hypersonic missiles. They didn't have the long-range drones. They didn't have any of that. This is all new, and Iran had a relatively weak air force. So this is an entirely new dynamic in the situation. And what can be used, of course, to hit Israel can also be used to hit U.S. and United Kingdom military bases throughout the region, right? And Iran has lots of, shall we say, irregular allies with the Houthis and Hezbollah and Kataib Hezbollah. But I would say that the realization of Iran's new long-range strike capability and the growing unease in the Pentagon as they look at their own ever-dwindling stock of air defense interceptor missiles, right? But for Patriot intercept missiles, which is the bedrock of U.S. air defense, right? They are producing somewhere between 550 and 650 air defense interceptor missiles a year. That's it. And that's after ramping up production. Now, most of those are currently going to the Kiev regime in Ukraine, almost all of them, right? And they're going through them like hotcakes. Now, usually when you fire a Patriot interceptor like this, for any given attempted interception, you should fire by procedure 2 missiles, 2 interceptor missiles, right, to increase your chance of a successful interception, which by no means guarantees it, but that's what they do. So 2 missiles per interception. Russia is firing, according to Western statistics, 4,000 missiles at the Kiev regime in Ukraine a year. You do the math. I mean, obviously, they're not that. And this is nothing new. Actually, before this conflict broke out, there were reports of a critical shortage of Patriot interceptor missiles and of the poor performance of the Patriots from Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia used them a lot during their then conflict with the Houthis to stop attack on Saudi oil fields, Saudi airports. They had a very low success rate with the Patriot systems firsthand. There were reports in the Western media at the time of how incapable the Patriot was performing for the job, and also then how critically short already the U.S. was of Patriot missiles to supply Saudi Arabia with. They were actually arranging for other Arab countries that had Patriot systems to transfer their Patriot interceptors to Saudi Arabia and giving those countries an IOU on them because they had a critical shortage even before the Russian intervention in the Ukrainian civil conflict. So very bad military-industrial planning and situation there for the United States. That is what they are most afraid of. They can't protect their bases in the Middle East. They can't protect Israel from Iranian long-range strikes because Iran, by all accounts, has a very large range arsenal of missiles and drones capable of hitting both Israel and Western military bases in the Middle East. That is what they are most afraid of, is Iran's, it's something that Iran hasn't had before. This is something new. It is a new dynamic. And the U.S. is caught woefully unprepared for it. And at this bad time when, they've diverted all Patriot system and interceptor production to Ukraine. They just announced that in the last month, that everything they're making now all other customers are deprioritized to send as much as they can to Ukraine. And the Russian Ministry of Defense put out another series of videos of another 3 Patriot launchers that they wiped out this week, right? So Russia's destroying them faster than the West can provide Patriots to Ukraine. And another, long-range strike threat, with the political necessity of defending Israel, the U.S. just isn't capable of it. They're not a military superpower, in relative terms to the rest of the world, the way they were in the 1990s and the early 2000s. The world has changed. Iran is stronger, right? Technology has resulted in the proliferations of drones, which, if you'll remember, the U.S. was the first one to start using drones in a major military way. The same thing with cruise missiles and other long-range strikes. This has proliferated now. The Houthis are firing cruise missiles, right? They're manufactured, with Iranian assistance, almost certainly. But it has resulted in a changing of the military balance. And it is not a balance in the U.S. favor. And all of that is exacerbated by the U.S. being completely overextended and militarily stockpile exhausted from the proxy war in Ukraine. They can't even provide for that conflict, much less another conflict in the Middle East. So I would say that it is the threat of Iranian long-range strikes and the inability of the U.S. to provide sufficient air defense for that has them most scared at this point, right? And that, of course, goes to what would be U.S. naval forces, within the theater, within the Persian Gulf as well. They would be a threat. There are lots of U.S. war games that have been run that resulted in the military people assigned to play the role of Iran in the war games, successfully using unorthodox anti-symmetric measures like essentially kamikaze boats and the like to wipe out U.S. aircraft carriers.
The open-minded Thinker Show news team has documented some of the military equipment Russia is capable of offering Iran to counter Israeli aggression. Among the most significant systems is the S-400 Triumph air defense system. This highly advanced surface-to-air missile system would be a game-changer for Iran, enabling it to engage and neutralize a variety of aerial threats, including aircraft, UAVs, and ballistic missiles from long distances. With a range of up to 400 kilometers, the S-400 would create a formidable air defense shield, making it extremely difficult for Israeli aircraft to operate in Iranian airspace without being detected and targeted. Another critical addition to Iran's defense capabilities would be the Pantsir S-1 air defense system. Combining medium-range surface-to-air missiles with anti-aircraft artillery, the Pantsir S-1 provides robust point defense against aerial threats, including precision-guided munitions. This system's mobility and effectiveness in intercepting low-flying targets would significantly enhance Iran's ability to protect strategic sites and military assets from Israeli airstrikes. The inclusion of the Iskander-M tactical missile system would provide Iran with a powerful offensive capability. This mobile short-range ballistic missile system can strike high-value targets with high precision at ranges of up to 500 kilometers. Equipped with both conventional and nuclear warheads, the Iskander-M would allow Iran to target Israeli military installations and critical infrastructure, thereby deterring aggression and complicating Israeli military planning. In the realm of aerial combat, the Su-35 Flanker-E multi-role fighter would be a valuable asset for Iran. This advanced fighter jet is equipped with sophisticated avionics and weapon systems, capable of engaging a wide range of aerial, ground, and maritime targets. Its superior maneuverability and combat capabilities would enhance Iran's air force, making it more challenging for Israeli aircraft to achieve air superiority. The Krasukha-4 electronic warfare system would bolster Iran's ability to disrupt Israeli radar and communication systems. This advanced electronic warfare system can jam and deceive enemy radar, satellites, and communication networks, providing a significant advantage in electronic warfare. By disrupting Israeli command and control capabilities, the Krasukha-4 would help protect Iranian assets and complicate Israeli military operations. On the ground, the T-90 main battle tank would offer enhanced protection and firepower. With advanced armor and a powerful 125mm smoothbore gun, the T-90 would improve the effectiveness of Iran's ground forces. Its modern fire control systems and superior battlefield performance would be a significant deterrent to any Israeli ground incursions. The Kalibr cruise missiles provide a versatile and long-range strike capability. These precision-guided munitions can be launched from submarines, surface ships, and aircraft, targeting a wide array of land and sea objectives. This capability would enable Iran to strike Israeli military and strategic targets from a safe distance, thereby enhancing its offensive reach. In terms of coastal defense, the Bastion P coastal defense system, equipped with P-800 Onyx supersonic anti-ship missiles, would secure Iran's coastal areas. With a range of 300 kilometers, these missiles would deter and neutralize any Israeli naval threats, protecting Iran's maritime interests. The BM-30 Smerch Multiple Launch Rocket System, MLRS, would offer devastating firepower against enemy troop concentrations and fortifications. This heavy rocket system can deliver a powerful barrage at targets up to 90 kilometers away, inflicting significant damage and disrupting Israeli ground operations. For naval engagements, the Yakhont anti-ship missiles would provide a potent offensive capability against Israeli warships. With a 300-kilometer range and the ability to evade defenses, these missiles would enhance Iran's naval defense and strike capacity. The K-52 Alligator attack helicopter would support Iran's ground forces with powerful armament, including anti-tank missiles and a 30mm cannon. Its reconnaissance and attack capabilities would enhance Iran's ability to engage Israeli armor and fortifications effectively. Finally, the Varshavyanka class, improved Kilo class submarines would offer stealthy underwater capabilities. Equipped with torpedoes, mines, and caliber cruise missiles, these submarines would provide Iran with a significant underwater strike capability, enhancing its naval warfare potential and deterring Israeli naval operations.
Cold figure. Follow me.